poll tool. Cavosa Excavating is a family-owned and operated company specializing in the installation of Title V septic systems. Cavosa Excavating is one of the largest septic system installers on Cape Cod. Whether it's upgrading your current system or installing a whole new system, Cavosa Excavating can do the job. Cavosa Excavating, 508-563-5530.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the September 30, 2013 meeting of the Falmouth Board of Selectmen. I invite you all to rise and join the board as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A few procedural announcements before we begin. If you have a cell phone or some other device that might spontaneously make noise, we ask that you silence it for the duration of your time with us. I'll make sure mine is. Please refrain from any private conversations here in the meeting room or immediately outside the doorway. It can interrupt the proceedings. If you would like to speak this evening, and there will be opportunities for public comment, please wait to be recognized by the chair. When you are recognized, come to the lectern, identify yourself for the record. We may know who you are, but that does not mean that the audience at home or our recording secretary does. And please direct all your questions and comments through the chair. Do not engage in any discussion or debate directly with board members or the audience. If you choose to leave before the meeting is over, please do so quietly, because obviously the meeting is not over and we still have business to conduct. If you choose to record the meetings, you may do so via audio. It is simply asked that you notify the board that you're doing so. If you would like to record the meeting with video, you would need to request permission from the board. So with that, is there anyone at this time who would like to record the meeting via audio or video? All right. And that'll move us to the first item on our agenda, which are announcements and proclamations.
Mr. Chair, we have a fairly lengthy agenda tonight with some very important issues, but I hope each one of you had a chance on the way to the meeting tonight or previously to admire what a fantastic sunset it was. We live in a fantastic town, and to be able to enjoy just the beauty of nature tonight, I was pleased that I was able to at least get outside for a little bit, and I hope that as we talk about some important issues tonight, we can reflect on that also. Thank you.
That's a nice thought. Thank you. A couple of announcements. Town Council's office will be holding a couple of seminars regarding the conflict of interest, open meeting law, and public records requests. The first will be on October 3rd, 2013, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. here in the Selectmen's Meeting Room. The second will be on October 10, 2013, from 3 to 4:30 p.m. here in the Selectmen's Meeting Room. Also, for those who are interested, the Department of Agricultural Resources of the State of Massachusetts has extended the comment period for the right-of-way management of NSTAR Gas and Electric. That was supposed to end on September 20. They have extended it for 45 days to the close of business November 4 of 2013. So anyone who's interested in that, there's additional time to comment. Do we have any other announcements from the board or the town manager's office?
No, sir.
All right. So with that, the next item on our agenda, the minutes of September 16, 2013, public session. Any adds, changes, deletions?
Make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second?
A motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of September 16, 2013 is presented. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? It's unanimous. All right, and the summary of actions. If any member of the board would like to hold one of these for further discussion, just let me know. I'm going to read through these.
Mr. Chairman, just before we get going on these, just to give a blanket disclosure, I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. We have item number 1 is an amendment to license agreement, the Town of Falmouth and the Open Cape Corporation.
Hold.
Item number 2, request for a wedding permit, Old Silver Beach, Della Porta, August 3, 2014. Item number...
Hold.
Okay. Hold item 2. Item 3, did you want to hold?
By covering item 2, I'd be able to cover item.
Okay, so item 3, request for wedding permit, Old Silver Beach, Pinero, September 20, 2014. Item number 4, request for wedding parking permit, Woodneck Beach, Cohen Stone, October 12, 2013. Request for special event, Rosary Rally, Peg Noonan Park, October 12, 2013. Request for special event, second annual Jingle Jog and Elf Run, Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, December 7, 2013. Item 7, NSTAR petition to install 1 4-inch underground conduit on Gunning Point Avenue. Item number 8, joint venture agreement, Highfield Drive. Item number 9, authorize the town manager to expend $5,431.50 for legal support to McGregor and Associates.
Hold.
We'll hold 9. Item number 10, request for special event, Fill the Boot campaign, Falmouth Firefighters Local, 1397. We'll hold this. Item number 11, request for special event, memorial service for A.J. Fernandez, the band shell, October 4, 2013.
Hold.
We'll hold that. And item number 12, donation to the Recreation Department from Falmouth Road Race, $5,000. All right, I need a motion, please, then, for items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 12.
So, second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Unanimous. Mr. Murphy, you held item number 1.
Yes, I was just looking for the term. I thought this was originally just a 1-year term on this lease, and when we granted it a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Mr. Chairman and Selectman Murphy, it's a permanent license.
this is
So it's being extended.
This is
Yes.
a permanent to be extended.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Should I also note, if I may, that there were some suggested language to be included in the motion with the board, if that would be your pleasure. I believe that is essentially resolved, but you should have an attachment with the language that's been suggested by council. Here's a copy of it.
Thank you very much. So whomever would like to make this motion?
I move to approve the license agreement amendment for Open Cape, subject to the following revision. Remove the first 5 words under Section A, the except in cases of emergency, and forward a signed copy. I understand how you extracted, okay, to read any personnel to the site except in the case of emergency. All right, hold on a second, please. Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have a motion that actually is going to make any sense to anyone in the audience or on the board.
Perhaps I could suggest that, subject to the board's concurrence, we had some adjustments from town council with the board's concurrence to that final agreement, but we'd ask the board for your approval moving forward.
Okay, is this something that we could perhaps do next week? Is there any time crunch here?
Heather, do you have any insight there?
I don't think there's any time crunch. The issues were with regard to an access agreement that allowed access to the site from the Open Cape. Those have been resolved, and the document reflects the recommended language. We received a document late today that reflects the recommended language by both Town Council and the Department of Public Works, the Water Department.
Okay. And that's...
Those were what were requested, yes.
Okay.
So it's up to the board. I think we could bring back the final document without any changes to you next week.
I think that would be preferable.
Yeah, reading this, I can see where the confusion might be. There's a lot of legalese here. So we'll take no action on this then until next week. And, let's see, Mr. Murphy, you held number 2.
Yes, I don't have a problem with the permit, but these are all for 2014, and I think that we need to notify all these applicants that the fees will be set for the year 2014 at our fee hearing in December. And so, in other words, I don't think we can quote them what the fee is until they pick up their permit. So pending, I make a motion to approve with the caveat that the office let them know that the fees will be set at our fee hearing in December of 2013.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous. Okay, number 9.
Yes,
Ms.
thank you,
Flynn?
Mr. Chairman. I held this because I'm sure we all remember that Judge Wolf made a decision on this case, which is the DEP and the Buzzards Bay Coalition and the Cape Cod Commission, which was part of the lawsuit regarding the Clean Water Act. And the judge did exercise, or actually made a decision of summary judgment on all the issues except one. And that one now has to be considered. And the judge has requested that the parties file an affidavit to the case, and now the Buzzards Bay Coalition has withdrawn from the suit. So now that leaves the EPA, the DEP, and the Cape Cod Commission. So I just put this out as a matter of information. I certainly will move this, but I think we need to be aware that it's not over yet. So we just may want to keep that in consideration. So I would move number 9 to authorize the town manager to expend $431.50 for legal support to McGregor and Associates.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you. Somebody please silence their cell phone. Let's see, item number 10. Mr. Jones, you held this?
I cannot support, I'll continue to say I cannot support activities that are asking for money on the street, whether it's from this organization or any other.
And I think this is simply a reschedule. We had previously approved this, and they had an issue with the date that we approved it, so they're coming back with a new date. It was previously approved for
The 17th.
the 17th. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think there's some agreement among the board that this is probably the type of fundraising that might not be appropriate because of some of the issues we've had with other groups that fundraise in the street. And I agree that we've already approved this. This is just proposing a different date. And I would support and move that we approve this time, but that we contact the other groups, the military group, as well as our own fire department, and have a conversation with them about why we think that this is not a very safe way in which to fundraise.
So we have a motion.
I'll second the motion, but I do want to reiterate that we did say to them that this would be the last year. There's a note in the file there, and I think it's important that they know they need to find another venue to do this instead of the streets.
Okay. Motion and a second.
I just think it's important that we say that's for all organizations. And the other thing that I have seen this same type of fundraising in other towns, and it has not been in a street, it's been in a supermarket or something of that type. And I think I commented about that this can be done, and it definitely is worthy, but not in the street.
Further comments? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition?
Opposed?
4-1, the motion carries. And the last item held, number 11, Ms. Moffett?
Yes, is there anyone here from the A.J. Fernandez? I just wanted to make a personal note about this, that I was at his funeral, and I was incredibly impressed with the number of young people who were there and the sadness that occurred because of this. And it is very good to know that there is a support group, and they want to be together. And when I read it, I was very pleased to read that this is happening. So it is a personal note to you and all of his friends.
We do have a note from the police department suggesting the time change from,
Yes.
instead of 8 to 10 p.m., be 7 to 9 p.m., or at least for the consideration of the residents. It is a residential area. And
I'll make a motion to approve with the modified times from the police department, 7 to 9.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
second?
All right.
Well, I just have a question whether or not the family agrees with this, or it can,
The reason why we did it is,
Yeah, okay. That's all right.
just-
the reason why we.
I'm sorry, could you state your name again?
Shannon Sylvester.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chairman. The reason why we did it so late in the day is because Falmouth has an away game that day, so they will be in Sandwich, and a good chunk of his friends are on the team still. So I wanted them to also be a part of that, and, I don't want them to miss out because they had to be at a football game. Also, my son also has football practice that evening, and he doesn't get done until 7. So the volume of music and such will be low. It's not going to be a very rowdy event. It's not going to be anything that's going to be obnoxious to annoy anyone. It's more of just a gathering, so friends and family, people are coming back from college, and, so travel, things like that.
How does the board want to proceed?
I would like to support what she said, because I did go to your gatherings before, and they were under control. And granted, it does say music, and it does say that is a residential area across the street there. So, but I would endorse what you just said.
Can I suggest a compromise?
Well, let's hear it.
The compromise is that we give her the 7 to 10, but the music stops at 9.
That we can do, most definitely.
So that keeps the neighbors happy, and because it is adjacent to a senior housing project.
So that's the amendment to your motion?
That's amendment to a motion.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, 7 to 10, music stops at 9. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, could I just note one of the items that we received, just confirming that from Harbor Master Greg Frazier, the restrooms attached to the Harbor Master's office close at 5 p.m. in the month of October. So I wanted to note that as well. The restrooms at that location will not be open after 5 p.m. So I would not want to mislead anybody in that regard.
But I guess as I read in the note, there is an option for the group to contact the harbor master to make arrangements outside of the contract to arrange for them to be open.
Correct.
And at their cost.
Correct.
Further questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
The opposition? Unanimous. And that dispenses with the summary of action items. Next item on our agenda is a public hearing. This is a liquor license violation hearing. Anyone who is present for this? Let's see. We have...
Mr. Chairman, before we get going on these liquor violations, because this is on off-premise licenses, I'm not required by law to make a disclosure, but I will make that disclosure anyways, that I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal on-premise liquor license.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. There are 6 package stores.
Should we start with this?
We will. I just want to identify them so that they are all aware of what we need to do. Anyone who's going to be speaking this evening, testifying, will need to stand and recite an oath because this is a hearing. Mr. Richard Lemoyne, Kenyon's Market, are you or your representative here? Please stand. Please stand.
I'm sorry.
And anyone who, for your organization, who may be testifying as well would need to stand. Okay. Vincent DiMartino, Three-Way Enterprises, are you or one of your representatives here? Okay. Shilpa Patel, Family Foods. Robert Crocker, RJ's Variety. And Andrew Salthouse, Salthouse Enterprises, Old Barn Package Store.
Andrew's not here, I'm the owner of
Okay.
that.
I ask that you all raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me.
Mr. Cappies.
Oh, Cappies?
Yeah.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Brian Wheeler, manager, Cappies? Okay, thank you. Okay, are you going to be testifying as well, sir? Then you may want to stand and recite. This hearing is being conducted in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64, which requires that the Board of Selectmen investigate complaints regarding liquor licenses with witnesses under oath. In order to comply with the statute, all persons intending to testify at this hearing shall now stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Will the Secretary please note in the record that all persons intending to testify at this hearing stood and took an oath prior to testimony? And we'll begin with Mr. Lemoyne, Kenyon's. We have, is the chief here? We'll begin with the chief, excuse me. Good evening.
Edward Dunn, Police Chief. Mr. Chairman, on Sunday, August 18th, 2013, 2 members of the Falmouth Police Department, my staff, one of them being the Falmouth Liquor Enforcement Agent, Detective Michael Semino, conducted an underage compliance check in the town's package store using an underage operative. The following Massachusetts general law and ABCC regulation, a total of 13 stores were checked that night, and of the 13, the 6 that you mentioned failed. If you wish, Detective Semino is here, and he can explain what the procedure is as far as going forward with the operation.
Okay. Would the board appreciate it? Okay. If
Yes.
you would.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Detective Mike Semino, Alcohol Enforcement Officer for the Police Department. Real quick, we did conduct the operation using an underage operative. We had to kind of do a whirlwind night that night. We did 13 in one night. There was a time constraints on both sides, but we worked on a night where we could get 13 of them done. We met with the young man prior to the operation. I did a short interview with him, made sure he had the fitness to do the job. Asked him if he was able to do what we needed to do, and he said he had no problem doing that. Filled out all the appropriate paperwork with him, release forms and so forth. He was given a breathalyzer before and after the operation, passed both. A headshot and a full body picture was taken of him prior to the operation, and then we headed out. That night, like I said, we did 13. We started in East Falmouth and kind of worked our way through town. Every operation every store was the same. He was issued a $20 bill. He was to buy 6-pack of Bud Light bottles and attempt to show no form of identification. And if he was asked for identification, he was to leave the store forthwith. So we did every operation, sent him in. If he did come out with the beer, we went back in immediately, notified the store, brought back the beer, brought back the change, and in turn received our $20 bill back, and we got a receipt for the item. So at every store we did that. Every store, whether they passed or failed, I went in and contacted either the manager, the store representative, and everybody was very, first of all, apologetic that it happened, receptive, and wanted to know what they needed to do in the future. They were given a notice of violation that night, just a temporary one. They did receive a permanent one from the chief a few days later in hand by myself. And again, everybody that I met with was severely apologetic and wanted to know what they could do from that time forward. So I told them just things would be happening in the future, and put it in the hands of the chief. So, but it was a very smooth operation, and like I said, everybody gets complaints once in a while. Our job, this type of job, but just do a little more diligent.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Okay. How often is this done in Falmouth?
We probably haven't done one for a couple of years. We've done some other, the restaurants and bars recently, but we have not done a package stores. I think I've been in the position for 2 years and haven't done one since the first for me.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Detective. All right. Mr. Lemoyne? Give you an opportunity to state your case and any...
My name's Richard Lemoyne. I'm the owner of Kenyon's Market in East Falmouth. On August 19th of this summer, my company, one of our employees, screwed up. It's unacceptable for any person under the age of 21 to be sold alcohol. It's Kenyon's policy for every employee to be trained from the first day they started our company. They're sat down, given the rules and procedures, sign it, and within 60 days we have everybody in our company take an alcohol class such as BAT training. We give them 60 days because sometimes the classes aren't readily available and stuff. On that night, 100% of my employees were just recently trained in the summer, and unfortunately, we screwed up. I sent every one of my employees back, 16 of them, went to the class a week later, worked it out with the police chief, and they helped us out getting a class. I want to say that I believe, I apologize if I'm wrong, 16 of the package stores in Falmouth attended the class, either the manager or the employees. In my case, we brought a whole gang with us. Cappy's had a very good turnout. Every store that was cited, I can personally tell you, was at the class, and we got a lot of people together, and the main thing was teaching them how to ID correctly and stuff. it sounds real simple, but it does get problematic in the town because a lot of people have never had the training and stuff, so I think it's really good to bring it in. I just can say, I'm sorry, we definitely messed up, and one of my senior people was a young lady who sold it. She's been working for me for 5 years. On our company's procedure, we could have fired her. I didn't do that at this point. She was not given a pay raise. It was good for me, I guess. But the bottom line is, we're here. We don't want to be here for this type of thing, and I apologize for my company. And I guess that's the best thing I can say. Any questions I can help you with?
Questions from the board?
How long have you been in business
I've been-
and had a license?
I think it's my 35th year for the license. Might be 34 coming up.
In the same location?
Yes.
And you don't have a turnover of employees? You basically...
Unfortunately, we did, due to a point. That's one of the problems in the town, I think, is we have a lot of young people coming and they like make $10 an hour. The next thing they're going to someplace else and stuff. So that's kind of one of the tough things for us in training. My core group is I have 20 employees like this time of year. And we do as best we can, but this year we had a little more turnover than we've ever had before in my company's case, which I think put a little stress on us, but it's no excuse. The gentleman was 21 years old, and our policies clearly, if you're 32 years old, you're supposed to be ID'd, and they weren't. As you know, that's wrong, and I know.
Is there an issue because of the date that it happened?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it was the summer. It can make a million excuses. Bottom line, myself, some of my fellow liquor store owners, we screwed up, and we have to get better at what we're doing, because our intent, I don't think anybody's intent is to make an extra buck selling a 6-pack of beer or anything like that. We just have to pay attention to what we're doing. I mean, the one thing I'd say to you, too, there's another problem in IDing cigarettes and stuff. It's another thing that'll be coming up shortly. The 18-year-old sting operations going on for that as well. So, I mean, we're trying to really stay on top of the IDing. And I can't say we're always 100%, but we certainly, in my company, we try to make a case of being 100%. So I apologize for taking your time to be here for this.
Just to put on the record, we do have a prior incident, but back in 2008, with a young man with a fake driver's license. So a very different incident, but one that we just do have on record of purchasing alcohol from Kenyans.
Okay. Would you like me to explain that?
I don't think it needs I mean, if someone using a fake license, it just happened, and
Okay.
we just need to put it in the record.
Thank you.
Mr. Lemoyne?
Yep.
We still have questions.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
No, Rick, I really don't have a question, but I think you said it very well, that you have to be really on top of this and monitor your employees, really make sure that they've been trained properly, and have somebody there occasionally, to really make sure that that training occurred, and that they're doing the job well. I think that it comes down to really the appropriate supervision of the staff. And I know that's hard sometimes, especially in the summer, but that's what it really comes down to. And I think you said it very well, that you just need to do it better. And I'm sure the others would probably agree with that.
We try to have a manager in the store at all
Right. times,
somebody that's in charge, might not be the smartest person, but they're in charge. So we try.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mike.
I've most of my adult life has been in one form or another in the liquor industry, whether having worked for a major brewing company or in owning a restaurant. And I realize that the managers and owners cannot be at the exchange level 24/7 when the stores are open. However, we're all only as good as the training we provide, and we're all only as good as the people that we hire. I do know, and I'm a firm believer in the carrot versus the stick. I know that most of these businesses who are here tonight have been reputable businesses in this community for years, and I don't think that we have flagrant violations. I think that it sometimes is a wake-up call. There is one thing that I would like to check on. I do know that the on-premise establishments in this town are required to have tips training for all of their employees. I think it's great that you were preemptive, that you got the training before you came before the Board of Selectmen, but I think it would be advantageous to this board to think of requiring the same type of training for the off-premise establishments. Every year, folks, including my own business, we hand in the tip certificates. If folks, those good to 3 to 5 years, folks would work there the year before, you just merely hand the certificate in. New employees will either take the course or have to do it online, one of the two options. So I'm going to throw that out to the board. I think that's more advantageous. I know that the chief was, before he was chief, was very active in that in the years past of tips training. So I think the more education we give to our employees, the better it is as we move forward.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was sitting on the bad spot making a recommendation, but when I was going to all the package stores to organize the classes, I did notice that a lot of those store managers aren't certified and stuff, and I did ask the town clerk at the selectman's office, I mentioned that might be a possibility for this year if they could do it, give them a little bit of notice so they don't have to come in last second and try to get the thing. But I believe the package store managers at least should be certified. I personally believe every employee after 60 days it would be advantageous to train, because if we're all doing the same thing, IDing, and we all have the same knowledge, like my cashiers might be asking for an ID up the street, might not ask the same type of way. With training kind of gets everybody to the same happy medium somewhat.
And it's important to note that this training is not just strictly about identification. It's about who you serve alcohol to. Does the person look impaired when you're serving them the alcohol? Just because it's an on-premise place or an off-premise place, you have the liability if you're serving alcohol to somebody who's already somewhat intoxicated or impaired. And those are the judgments that this training does. So I think it's advantageous for the board, the community, the police department, and everyone for us to set up a policy moving forward on that.
And like our case, Kevin, you were in the serving business. They have a different type of training course. They work very heavily on intoxication and stuff, because hopefully we don't see them too intoxicated too often. But the package stores have a thing called BAT, which is beverage and alcohol training. It's a 3-hour course, and yes, licensing is huge because they push what's licensed. Like Massachusetts, we're not supposed to take an out-of-state driver's license on Cape Cod, and we risk that problem. If we take a Rhode Island driver's license, it's at our own peril. This is in your case. So training is so important with the licenses and stuff. Like just having a little knowledge can sometimes be very warm. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. And again, I'm sorry it took you time tonight.
Mr. Martino, Three-Way Enterprises?
Are we making a different recommendation on each one?
At this point, I'd like to give every business the opportunity to state their case and give the board the opportunity to ask questions, and then we'll see where the board wants to go with this in terms of closing the hearing and either taking it under advisement or making decisions this evening. So.
Okay.
Good evening. Vincent DiMartino representing Three-Way Liquors. Also, unfortunately, very disgusted and aggravated at having something like this occur in our business. We definitely don't want this to occur again, so we're sending our employees to these compliance training courses, and any new hire from now on would also be required to do this as well. Like we've said, as when I'm there, I make a point to card everybody, and I try to instill that by example, and sometimes it's not possible, but that's why I believe these training courses will help my employees perform much better in the future. But yeah, definitely we do not ever want to sell to anyone underage, and it aggravates us as managers and people who run these businesses to have that occur in our establishment. And I apologize.
Questions from the board?
Would you be interested in each one of your employees that are selling or registered selling alcohol to go to these classes?
Oh yeah, actually, we have sent them to the compliance course, the Mass Pack that Rick Lemoyne set them up for the liquor stores that were in violation. But obviously, I should have done this previous to that, but going forward from this, as it is a wake-up call, that from now on, anyone who is employed for Three-Way is going to be going through these compliance classes.
Okay, so possibly the person who was at the register that night, had not gone through this course?
No, actually, he was a new hire, actually. He's only there for several weeks, but still not an excuse. You know, training aside, you know, it's a very minimal thing to have to ask for an identification, but it's a maximum importance. And sometimes they get remiss in that. But we have to stress to them that there can be no lapse in that part of our business.
And how long have you been in business?
7 years.
So, in the same location?
Yes.
For the record, in June 22, 2010, we did have another violation of an underage operative purchasing alcohol at Three-Way Enterprises. The commission did suspend the license for 3 days at that time.
Further questions or comments from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Shilpa Patel, Family Foods.
My name is Twinkle Patel. I'm the owner of the Family Foods. Shilpa Patel is my wife. She cannot be here today, so I'm representing on a behalf side. Just the way everybody else said, you know, after it happened, we did went to the class. We got certified. Before I was certified by myself, my wife, who's the manager in the store, she was certified. But some of the key employees wasn't certified. But Mr. Reed came with a good idea that, you know, now on we should send all the key employees, basically all the people who's on the register should go on a training. That's what we're going to do now on. But for that mistake, I apologize again, you know. But we do certify now for, you know, 2 key employees who's on the register now after the fact happened.
Questions from the board?
How many employees do you have?
Total employees, we have, you know, more than 10, but all of them doesn't work on the registers. Only 2 on and off works on the register, and they both certified now by the training.
Further questions from the board?
Just for the record, we do have an incident from December 2008 dealing with liquor being sold in Bourne under the without being properly licensed, and the license was suspended for 30 days.
Just have to make one comment. I purchased this business in 2011, so I wasn't the owner of the store that time.
Okay.
And I currently own other liquor stores, and this is my first violation, and I'm in this industry for over, you know, 7 years. So, you know, we're going very strictly moving forward.
I'd just like to make one other comment. All of these other violations that Mr. Jones is speaking of were not violations within the town of Falmouth. They were in the town of Falmouth, but were by the ABCC, not the Falmouth Police Department.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you. Mr. Crocker, RJ's Variety.
Bob and Judy Crocker, RJ's Variety, 174 Sandwich Road. My wife and I have owned RJ's for 13 years, 13 good years.
Clean years.
Without a violation. I want to apologize for the fact that we're even here. The employee that was involved is a 70-plus-year-old, longtime Falmouth resident, longtime Falmouth sales clerk in the liquor industry, and she's as upset as we are at the fact that it happened to her. That it happened. She's out front and cards almost everyone.
We're shocked that it was her in any way, shape, or form.
We have 5 part-time employees that are either friends or the rest of us are family. We have sent them all through the BAT training since, and we will continue to do so for any new hires.
I just think about your place, and I'm one of your customers, and it seems as if maybe your customers are probably the same customers.
Yes,
I mean, it seems
we
like
are
it's
a
kind of
neighborhood
a
store.
neighborhood,
Yes.
a neighborhood place, and
Yes.
it probably isn't the greatest accent of everything that you sell in your store. But in thinking about that, that probably if someone did show up who appeared to be younger, I mean, I would just think that it would just set off such an alarm.
Anybody
kind of a
that does
thing.
show up, with the exception of this one time, is carded.
Okay.
It's our policy.
It was probably our fault a little bit, because this particular woman at 70, she tends, and by no means did we suggest she be nice to the younger group and not card them, but what I'm saying is, she tends to yell at them a little bit and say, shut off your radio, shut off your phones, you're blah, 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 blah. So we kind of were a little hard on her 2 weeks ago, and it came back to bite us. But in no way did we mean for her to be nice to them as far as passing them alcohol. We didn't mean that in any way. But that came back to bite us a little bit, and we apologize. And we have a 19 and a 16-year-old grandson, so we thank the chief and his detective for this particular thing, because we would never want our kids to get it. So we thank you and thank all of you.
And now everyone is certified, is that what you're saying? They've gone through the training?
We have one more girl, new hire, that we were going to send through.
Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wheeler, Cappy's?
I am Brian Wheeler, Cappies. We apologize for the incident. We have no ever intended to sell to a minor. We take it very seriously. In hiring new employees in our establishment, I have a bunch of other stuff I could show you, but they have an employee handbook that they have to sign saying that they understand the rules on, how to card. We also have another agreement, which is a general policy on tobacco and alcohol that we actually have them sign when they're hired. And we do send all of our people to the BAT training that other people have spoken about tonight. We always have done that since I've been there. I've been there 19 years. And I regret that we have to be here doing this tonight. It's something we do take very seriously. I think we all do. I can show you the stuff if you'd like to see it. I've got a bunch of documents, but I think you know where I'm going with it. And again, I apologize that we have to take up your time on this.
Questions from the board? All right, thank you. And Mr. Salthouse, the Old Barn Package Store? Oh, sorry.
So I'm Peggy Salthouse, the owner of the store. Over the years, we've been in business as a family business through uncles, and my husband buying out the business since 1948. We strive very hard to be diligent, making sure everybody's of age to purchase tobacco, lottery, alcohol. I mean, we've got it all. This has been quite a wake-up call. Our criteria has been to card everyone who looks less than 30. This has changed. Also, our employees have gone to the BAT training, all passed. We've installed new equipment that we hope will help identify, because we have a big turnover of tourism and everything else. We have to deal with a lot of altered IDs and everything, and we've installed this equipment. And we are retraining all our employees, and just to hope this never happens again. We're very sorry about it.
Questions from the board?
Because of your location, you would have a lot of people who would not be Massachusetts residents.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so what do you do with that license from out of state?
From out of state, we ask for backup. And if they don't have it, we do have a book also that we can compare licenses with. And this new machine that we've got, those out-of-state licenses can go in and verify that they haven't been altered, no expiration, the expiration day hasn't passed, but we still compare them with the people that are there, and we ask for some sort of backup with their name or some kind of identifying thing with it.
I would think as the number of years that your family have had that business, that you would be very aware if someone was trying to have a false ID, or I would
We've
think
tried.
so with your business.
Yes,
there.
thank you. Anything?
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, so if there is anyone in the general public who would like to comment or ask questions at this time. All right, then. How would the board like to proceed?
I think we can go ahead and at least close the hearing.
All right. Is that a motion then, or?
I'd just like to make a comment. If we close the hearing and we make some decisions, I'd like to still be able to take some input from the affected parties. I know that's a little bit different, but...
Well, we don't necessarily have to close the hearing at this
That's
point,
correct.
then. We could keep it open pending any additional information or questions that the
Okay.
board might have.
I think that might
Withdraw my motion.
So the board could take action this evening. We could ask for recommendations from the chief. We could take action next week or some other meeting in the near future based on recommendations, or if there are any questions that the board has.
I'd like to hear from the chief if we could,
All right.
what his thoughts are.
Chief?
He's the one charged with dealing with these operations.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say, as just like Murphy had said, I was the alcohol compliance officer for 5 years when I was the captain, and we had conducted many of these. This is the first time that I recall that the police department wasn't blamed for the operation. And really, seriously, every time it's the police department tricked us and things like that. I mean, they all took ownership that there was a mistake. In fact, when I spoke with the town manager on that, I believe Monday morning, I advised him that, we had 6 violations. I don't recall 6 violations at one time in all the years that I had done it. Excuse me. And I felt just that was a training issue somewhere. And the next morning or that afternoon, I did get a call from Rick Lemoyne, who had already set up the training. He also felt that there was a training issue, and I agreed with him. They did hold the training exercise September 4th at the rec center. I couldn't attend, but what I did do is I sent one of our lieutenants, Lieutenant Smith, who was in the partnership, and I believe some members of the partnership also showed up to explain their views on underage drinking and alcohol and things like that. And it was, from what I understand, the reports back, it was an outstanding seminar with over 60 managers, owners, and employees attending. So, I mean, they took ownership for their mistakes, and it's something we don't want to see. So, and again, here tonight, like I said, it's the first time nobody blamed the police department. They took ownership for their mistakes. So, again, whatever the board decides, I would support.
Question?
I don't have a question. I just have a statement to make. I think the owners, I agree with the chief. I think the owners came here with the understanding that they knew that something happened that they didn't want to happen, obviously, and they sure don't want it to happen again. And I think that's really important. They took steps, they took the appropriate action. And my thinking would be on this matter, and in most cases, this has been the first time for some of the license holders, is that we take it under advisement. And maybe over the course of the year, like prior to January 1, when licenses come due, that they provide us with a list of the training that their employees have had up to that point, naming them and what training they have had. And then maybe again, say in May, prior to the summer, they send us another report with the training that they have had in preparation for the summer months. And then by October, it would be a year. And I would think that the commitment that they have to manage their businesses the right way, which they obviously have, and they have for many years, run it properly according to all the rules, regulations, and laws of the Commonwealth. So I would think that what we have heard tonight and what we have discussed, in my mind, is sufficient to help us all move forward in the right direction. That's my thought.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Chair.
okay. I think there should be a decision this evening, because I think that anyone that has a alcohol selling business that want to know what we're deciding. And I think to allow it to go on for a period of time, and then we bring it up at another meeting and everyone comes back again. I had a really kind of a strict idea in my mind before I listened to everyone, and I was really on the side of it's wrong. It's just wrong. But as I listened and as I thought of your businesses, and I have been a customer in several of those businesses, and they're family-oriented and they're sincere, and I'm not going to be as strict, I guess, as I had thought earlier, but I really would like for us to make a decision this evening on
What kind of a decision do you have in mind?
well, I mean, we have choices of what we can do, and that's what I'm saying. So whatever our choice, and there are several, but I would like for that decision to be made now. I mean, that's just out for discussion, but that would be my viewpoint of,
Well, Mr. Chairman, if we could, what are the choices? I mean, could
Oh.
you
Well,
suggest what they are?
You've essentially suggested monitoring, that there would be no
Take on under
penalties.
advisement and monitor, correct?
Basically monitor the performance and behavior of these package stores over the next year. Other actions that the board could take would be suspensions, where their license would be suspended for a number of days, at which point they wouldn't be able to sell alcohol for that period of time. We could revoke the license, which may be a little extreme, given that, as you noted in some of these cases, this is a first violation for these businesses. And then, of course, we could ask for additional recommendations from the chief, which we may want to take it under advisement this evening and come back and perhaps next week or at a later meeting, look at whatever recommendations the chief can offer, so.
Again, I'm going to follow up to the idea and the ideal that you get more with honey than you do with vinegar, that education is the key. And so I'd formulate a motion that would say that we require all of these folks, and I think ultimately we should require all off-premise licensees. As a matter of fact, I'll reframe the motion, that we require all off-premise licensees to have all of their employees who sell alcohol be bat trained, and that they provide that every year when they pick up their license. These folks are all year-round licenses. They have a given window now, not only these folks, but the folks that just somehow didn't, they didn't have an opportunity to make a mistake. They did the right thing, but it could happen to anybody. And you have to be aware of that. But the key here on our behalf is we need to provide the leadership to be able to say to these folks, you need to require your folks, your employees, to be bat trained. So my motion would be that we require all off-premise licensees to have bat training for all their employees. And I guess the given time would be within 60 days of their hire.
Mr. Chair, I just am not sure I feel that's appropriate for a part of this hearing. I think that's an excellent policy that we might adopt for holders of liquor licenses. But this hearing is about these people who have had a violation, not the other 7 places. And I would be very happy to support that motion separate from this hearing. What are we going to do about these people who have had violations?
Well, if that's the way you want to do it, we can just basically do the motion that would be that all of the folks who had a violation, a requirement of their licenses that all their employees be bat trained, and that they provide that on an annual basis, the certificates of that training. Many times those certificates are good for 3 to 5 years for an employee.
3 years, is what I'm hearing, okay.
Right.
Thank you. Well, we have that motion, does anyone want a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second, so discussion on the motion then.
Again, I guess I would still, if we are going to have any kind of restriction or punishment as you were, I would rather have it not be that, but be whether it's under advisement, whether it's a probationary period, whether it's a suspension for a day. And after we've dealt with that punishment, we then determine all 13 or all alcoholic liquor licenses have that policy. I mean, the problem with the way we're doing it right now is if we just require these, why aren't we requiring the other liquor stores to do it also? If we really believe in that as a policy, as opposed to really just a punishment.
Well, I tried to accomplish that, but you didn't want me to.
I tend to agree with what Mr. Jones is saying here. I think we've got two issues, and I think, Mr. Murphy, your suggestion that we require all establishments to be bat-trained, all off-premises licenses to be bat-trained, I think that is probably a good idea going forward and may help prevent these sorts of situations in the future. For the moment, though, I would say that the horse has left the barn, so to speak, and that these folks have already gone through this, and I commend them for doing so voluntarily. But the question is there anything else? Because at this point, requiring that as mitigation or as a result of the violations, it's already been done. So the question is there anything else the board wants to consider or anything that the board should consider? And Mr. Jones said the word probation, I think, is probably a good idea in this situation, that we may want to issue some sort of a probationary period to these establishments and say that, if this does happen again within the next 6 months, that more severe penalties, such as license suspensions, will be considered or will be imposed. I think, what we heard this evening from the various establishments was a degree of remorse for what they did, and I agree with Rebecca that I think at this point they understand what they've done. I think they've obviously taken a proactive approach to addressing the issue, and I think whatever the board does at this point, I certainly don't want to be too heavy-handed. I think probation, that's a very good idea, actually.
Well, these are all experienced business people, and these businesses have been in Falmouth for a really long time. We have one, obviously, license holder who's fairly new. But I think I agree with Kevin that the most important thing here is the bat training. That's what we want to make sure, that they are providing the bat training to their employees, and that they are cognizant of the fact when they have a new employee that they have to make sure that that employee is trained or the employee doesn't sell liquor and use it until they are trained. I think that's the important thing. For most of them, this is a one-time. I've been on this board, 17 years, and this is the first time I have ever participated in a hearing like this. And I know it's not the first time that there have been either visits by the ABCC, and obviously the Falmouth Police Department in the past has done these. But I think that we have to recognize the fact that we have very professional business people here running very good operations, and I don't know that a one-time offense, for the most part, really warrants a probation, if you will. That's why I suggested that we just take this under advisement, and that we require that we receive letters from them prior to the licensing come January 1, that they provide us with the information of the bat training on all their employees, and are they current at that time. And then prior to the summer, so that we know we're coming into the remainder of the so-called year from October 1 to October 1, in other words, the time of when we are notified of the violation. And then just make sure that come April or May, that the same training is being provided. And I think you don't have to call it probation, but it's putting, I think, the owners on notice that they need to make sure that their training is done, and they need to let us know when it's been done and who the employees are that have been trained. That's the way I look at it.
Could the chief come back again, or another question? So we are at this point of saying that we want everyone to be trained, and I agree with everything that has been said here, but could you give us some advice? Should there be more? Should there be a probation time, or should there be something happening to license? Just, could you?
I mean, there always can be more training, as you know. You can never get enough training.
Okay.
Like I say, they did step up and suggested the training, and that was my thought in the very beginning, that to get this many violations at one time, it had to be a training issue, and I believe that's what it was. I'm thinking similar to what they would do in the courts and things like that, and there are probation periods, depending on whether or not you want to put a probationary period in there. We can also do some more enforcement. I don't know if that's, something that the board wants. We can do it as often as we like. We try to do it once a year. It's been a few years since we have done it. We'll be doing the pouring establishments next. So, like I said, this is basically the first time that I recall that the police department wasn't blamed for it. So they did take ownership of it this time, and everybody was involved, the partnership, the police department, and the establishment. So perhaps some more training. Again, they've had the training that is required by the law, the BATS training. I don't know if TIPS is another, like you say, they're not a pouring establishment, but TIPS does come up with some real interesting pieces as far as Kevin had said, as far as the, sobriety of individuals coming in, things like that.
Can I ask a cheap question? Was the training done to any other establishments, or just the ones who were in violation?
No, there were, I have the list here. 14 of the 18 establishments participated in the training. And again, that was not on the police department's part. That was Mr. Lemoyne, who went out and sought these people and actually set up the training. I just assisted him with the, with the rec center, and made sure that they had a large enough venue to take that many people, and had our officers, lieutenant, and the partnership, we invited the partnership to participate in it.
Thank you.
All right, well, we have a motion, and I believe we have a second.
Could we repeat the motion?
The motion is that we require BAT training for all of the establishments that were before us tonight, before they receive their licenses, for all of their employees who sell alcohol, meaning do the transaction, before their renewal period, which is January 1st. And that any new employees be required to be licensed with their BAT training within 60 days of their hire, and then that would be ongoing, the training forward.
Okay.
I just want to say one other thing. There's been times in the past when I've been on this board, there were times when I was not on this board, and there have been folks who have come in before this board, most of which were in the on-premise segment. Never has this board taken any action against anybody in their first offense. Our job is to try to make people better retailers, better business people. We're not here to hurt the people who work in our community. We try to help our economy. We're here to help them, not hurt them. And sometimes, eventually, we may need to use the stick, but I don't think that's appropriate at this time.
Further discussion?
Before we make a decision on Mr. Murphy's motion, do we need to close the hearing officially to be able to make that decision?
Well, we can't close it in the middle of a motion, so I think,
Well, we'll have to dispense with the motion, either by withdrawing it or voting on it, and then we can formally close the hearing.
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion, and then...
I'll move that we close the hearing.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, so the hearing's officially closed.
So I'll reiterate my motion and move that we require BAT training of all the employees of all of these retail establishments that appeared before us this evening, and we require that on an annual basis. Any new employees would be required to be trained within 60 days of their hire.
So there's a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Is it appropriate to put an agenda item in the next 2 or 3 weeks for a recommendation of policy on all of them?
Sure. We can do that, yes. That would be a good idea, actually. All right, next item on our agenda. We have presentations for town meeting articles. We have, let's see, 7 petitioners' articles and 3 articles for the Water Quality Management Committee. And we will go in order. Article 22 is on the petition of Mr. Shearer. Request for additional reporting. Is Mr. Shearer here this evening? I do believe that he was, we do have a letter here. He was notified that the board did invite him to present his article to us for recommendation. Article 23, Mr. Finneran. This is request for additional audit. And Mr. Finneran also has Article 24, so.
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. This article reads, shall town meeting vote to form a capital/audit oversight committee made up of 50% plus 1 members of the public, and parenthesize mean no municipal connections. If you recall, in the recent past, we had a capital committee. I applied for that committee, gave some honest criticism, some suggestions, and we know how that turned out. Your capital committee proceeded, and they came up with, firstly, and their greatest suggestion was to reinstall the parking meters on Main Street. I don't know if anybody really noticed, but I mean, after about 5 years, finally all the businesses on Main Street are filled again and beginning to thrive. I think installing the parking meters would have a net negative effect. And I'd also like to suggest that this committee never looked at waste, fraud, abuse.
Oh, Mr. Finneran, can we stick to the
That's
substance
exactly
of
what
your
it
article?
is. That is the substance of the article. That's, as I suggested when I applied for the capital committee, these things should be looked into. It seems like all we get is inside audits around here. I mean, things really need to be looked at. You made a comment that departments gave back about $800,000, I believe, and you also commented that that indicates they're working hard, and it's we got a $120 million budget. I mean, if they're giving back $800,000, I mean, that demonstrates to me that they're pretty damn good at spending every penny they're given.
Mr. Finneran, can I ask you a question?
Certainly. You can ask me all the questions you like.
Okay. Your article asks that town meeting vote to form a capital/audit oversight committee. Made up of 50% plus 1 member of the public. So in essence, you're asking that a committee, a permanent committee be formed that has at least a majority of members who are not affiliated with the municipality.
Yeah, actually, a committee quite similar to your capital committee, but I think one that would be more open.
Okay.
I mean,
and
that had all the appearances of an inside job, basically.
Okay.
And I think there's other things that I'll present, whether it's accepted by town meeting or not. The public has a right to know.
You're not going to get any disagreement with me on that statement. But I guess what we're trying to get to is the substance of your article and your recommendation here. What would this achieve versus what has already been done by the Finance Committee, subcommittee, and by this larger subcommittee that was a combination of various individuals?
What it would do, it would honestly look for money without going to the public first. As I stated when I interviewed for the Capital Committee in the beginning, I didn't see that that happened at all.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I have one question. Who would appoint this committee?
Town meeting, you know, it's free, or take any other action, you know? I mean, it just needs to be done. I mean, we have some people that are performing at a subpar level. We can't afford it anymore. We got some real C students doing a D job. for money. I think that has to end, as I've said before.
Any other questions? All right, and you have the next article?
Yeah, the next one was, basically it reads, with the desire for a more open government and to foster more public participation, shall town meeting vote to ask selectmen to reinstate Chairman Brent Putnam's public question/comment period? I mean, this one was pretty much a no-brainer as far as the public was concerned. I can't think of any issue that I received more comment in such a short period of time. And if I could step back, when you initially brought that period out, question period out, there was a lot of positive response from the public. And so you gave them something and then you took it away. And when you did, you made it a policy discussion and you didn't even let any public input, or no public input was allowed. And I mean, I agree with you on what you did, Brent, 100%, and I found the arguments against it to be a little bit weak. And whatever, we'll bring it to town meeting and we'll let the people see it anyway. However they decide it, you know, who knows?
Questions from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Article 25, petition by Malcolm Donald, the demolition delay bylaw.
Malcolm Donald, 124 Ambleside Drive. It's not necessary to read this to you, is it?
No, and obviously we already have a demolition delay bylaw, so perhaps you could explain the significant difference between what we have and what you're proposing.
Okay. Well, we have a demolition bylaw that allowed one of a legendary building in Falmouth to be almost demolished. And if it weren't for the new owner, Warren Dalton, the two houses that comprise the Nimrod would be gone. And in light of the fact that we are going to be having we're going to be celebrating the bicentennial of the War of 1812, and to lose the two buildings that are the quintessential landmark that that people in town associate with that war, and to have them demolished without the public being aware that was underway is just unfathomable. So obviously that the way the bylaw is written right now, it does not work. In effect, there's a lack of public disclosure that a demolition request is being made. The Falmouth Historical Commission is able to make a decision and then hold a public hearing after the fact. And I don't understand that logic at all. Usually you have a hearing before you make a decision, so people from the public can voice their opinion and offer suggestions. So what happened in terms of the Nimrod is that the owner of the Nimrod, which was a bank in Chicago that really didn't know anything about Falmouth, probably didn't care anything, all they wanted was their money, applied for a demolition permit in March, and the public really wasn't aware of that action until this July 17th meeting of the Falmouth Historical Commission, after they had already decided to issue a waiver to demolish those buildings. And at their hearing, where they made that decision, there were only 2 people from the public. My understanding is there were only 2 people from the public that were there and that were aware of it. And at the following meeting, the room was jammed with people who were upset with that action, and who would have presumably would have been to the public hearing where they discussed it and voted it. Well, not the public hearing, to their meeting where they actually made their decision, had they known that it was happening. So what my changes to the bylaw will do is to require the Falmouth Historical Commission to advertise a hearing the same way that the Zoning Board of Appeals does, that it would have to be publicized for a number of weeks, and whatever that is, it's just it's the general, it follows the general laws that are already been set up for advertising a public meeting. And it would, so I've changed the definition of a public hearing to require that advertising, and in the article it states that you have to have a hearing before the Falmouth Historical Commission makes a decision, which is the way most people the logical way to do it.
Questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Donald, you're proposing amendments to section E and F of the chapters. Now, in section F, you have language there that's in italics.
Say again?
You have language here in paragraph F, or section F, that are in italics. Are those the changes that you want to make, the language that's in italics?
Yes.
Okay, and how about section E? There's no language in italics there. So is there anything in section E that you're proposing be changed?
All right, I'm sorry. Let me take a look at that again here. Well, I just rewritten the section E is changed to be to what I have written here as section E, and also section F. And those are different than the way section E and section F are currently written.
So both paragraphs are changes to the current language?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And it will be helpful to you as well. Can you summarize what the changes are? This is, it's very confusing because we don't have one versus the other, what was before versus what is now.
All right, okay.
So you're proposing that...
Okay, one, there's a, all right, one, we're redefining what a public hearing is. We're defining a public hearing as a real public hearing, similar to what a zoning board of appeals public hearing would be, i.e., it would have to be advertised to the public for, I don't know the specifics of it, but whatever, it's a couple of weeks. Maybe somebody can help me on it, but I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't try to reinvent the wheel here.
I think you're trying to explain what a public hearing is.
What's that?
I think you're trying to explain what a public hearing is, the components of a public hearing, as opposed to changing the definition of, I mean, a public hearing is a public hearing, and it has certain requirements in it.
Well, not according to the public hearing that's currently in the zoning bylaw. That's the whole problem. If it did, then people would have been aware that the Nimrod had been demolition had been, was before the Falmouth Historic Commission, and it wasn't, because it wasn't advertised in the newspaper. There was no general notice given to the public. It was essentially, you had to be paying attention to the, following the Falmouth Historical Commission, and if you weren't, you were out of luck, and that's how we were. We were out of luck.
Because E is exactly the way it is written in our code right now.
Yeah.
E has no changes, except for you left out half a sentence.
Okay, well, that's a change.
Well, it ends without, your period ends without the second half of a clause. And unfortunately, it doesn't make any sense the way you've ended it.
All right.
At least what we have in documentation from here, so I'm confused really as to what is being suggested as the change in section E. It does look like section F is just, there is a change in section F with the italicized words that we have in front of us. But beyond that, I don't see a change in E.
All right, well, not seeing the, okay, could I be tabled and let me come up with that?
Well, I think at this point, any changes that you make would be when you present the article on town meeting floor. But for the board's edification, what we need to know is what it is that you're trying to do here, the changes that you're proposing.
All right, number one is to define a public hearing.
Okay.
And that definition of a public hearing is the same public hearing that the Zoning Board of Appeals would have.
Okay.
And then the second thing is to require that the Falmouth Historical Commission hold a public hearing before they make a decision, and not make a decision and then hold a public hearing as what happened in the case of the Nimrod. And that's essentially, that's what it's all about.
Okay.
Can I ask you one question? Isn't it true that someone applies to demolish a building?
Correct.
They can just wait the 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, whether there's hearings or not, they can still demolish the building.
You are right. Yeah.
Okay, and the same case ended up happening, actually, at the Nimrod, that the 6 months passed and they were still negotiating, but, you know, if it weren't for the graciousness of the developer, the 6 months period had gone by.
Right.
So there really still is not a case for the hearings.
There's not a case for the hearings?
The hearings are only to speed up the demolition process.
Correct.
For the applicant.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're all aware
Yeah.
of that.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not asking to change anything else, except making sure that if they want to speed it up, that everybody has the ability to know what's going on.
And that's in what the bylaw is right now, is that if there's going to be a waiver, the bylaw says there must be a public hearing.
Right.
And what Mr. Donald has suggested here is clarifying the existing demolition delay bylaw to ensure that the public is, and if I understand what's been said this evening, is that when the hearing was held for the permit to bypass the 6-month delay, that it was properly noticed, excuse me, as an agenda item on their meeting, but there was no further public announcement or notice that this was in fact going to happen. So if you weren't watching the agenda for the Historical Commission, nobody would have known that in fact happened, and that was in fact what happened, that only a few people realized what was on the agenda.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And plus, the other thing that a notice would do is it would notify the general public that the clock is starting to tick. And so, you know, in the case of the Nimrod, when the general public became aware of it, there was only 6 weeks, I believe, to the end of the demolition delay period. And it was almost an insurmountable task, you know, to have any make any effect, to allow the public to take any measures to save the building.
Okay, and I see that here, the italics that you added to Section F, if the applicant still chooses to apply for a demolition permit, the commission shall hold a public hearing. In essence, like you say, to notify the public that the 6-month clock is starting.
Right.
Which, again, it didn't happen in this situation.
Right.
All right. Any further questions from the board? Well, thank you very much.
Can I ask a question? Where is this, where does this article go? Is it going to be reviewed by any other body?
The board may ask for a recommendation from the Historical Commission, given that this does affect a bylaw which falls under their purview. But the board will have to make a recommendation as to whether we're going to support the article or not. If there may be additional questions, we may reach out to, like I said, the Historical Commission or other bodies, the Town Manager's Office.
Okay. And it would only be the Historical Commission that would review this then, or?
Whomever the board asks to take a look, this Town Council's office, for example, we might ask them to look at it as well.
Just one more comment, Mr. McDonald. It's going to be important that you clarify for folks at town meeting where the changes are.
Yeah, okay.
Because we're having a problem figuring it out.
Okay, all right.
Maybe in red
Yeah.
or something of that nature.
We'll have an excellent presentation.
Okay,
yeah.
the part of the presentation is you need to hand people this, not just look at it up on the stage.
Yeah, okay.
Because I believe this will go in the warrant the way it is now.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Article number 26, Mr. Edelman, to limit trucks on Woods Hole Road. Not here this evening. Okay. Article 27, Ms. Driscoll, to establish a wind mitigation fund. Oh.
Dr. Edelman. My name is John Goldman. I'm standing in for...
Mr. Edelman?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to read the article to see if the town will vote to have the Falmouth Board of Health and/or the Falmouth Police Department, as appropriate, regulate and prohibit in accordance with 310 CMR 7.1 or 7.10 via its enforcement the travel of Class 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8 vehicles, except those required for emergency and official government purposes, for example, fire trucks, police and civil and national defense vehicles, ambulances, snow plows, tow trucks, school buses, etc. Per the aforementioned CMR on Woods Hole Road between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. every day due to such traffic noise causing sleep disturbance to residents along that thoroughfare during those hours, or do or take any other action on this matter. So here's an explanation. The residents along Woods Hole Road are awakened by the noise from Class 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8 vehicles, typically with more than 2 axles, most every night and no later than 4 a.m. each morning. This has caused a lack of sleep that adversely impacts their health and effectiveness at work and study in the case of students for the latter. The noise from those vehicles often exceeds the Department of Environmental Protection regulations by exceeding 10 dBA, or pure sound in 2 adjacent octave bands by 3 or more decibels above ambient at the nearest inhabited building.
Questions from the board?
It's basically noisy. I was outside today. It's not during those hours, of course, but it sounded like a helicopter. There's so much noise. It's just crazy. And part of it, I think, is the traffic for the ferries, which increases on an hourly basis.
I do know that the Falmouth Police Department has worked with, there's an umbrella organization called Quiet Roads Association, which has, as an umbrella, worked with various town and village organizations to work with the police department to try to get more enforcement of noise bylaws with respect to traffic. So certainly, I think there's precedent for this, although I've never seen an article. But there's always a first time.
I'd like to ask that we ask town council in regard to this article, because this is a state highway, Yeah, it's
Well, I
really-
think the reason of putting it...
I'm speaking here,
Sorry,
sir,
sorry.
thank you. So that we have any information on whether there's any jurisdiction that the town can impose, because in fact, it is a state highway, it's maintained by the state of Massachusetts. Thank you.
But as a group, we're trying to ask you through this as a community to say, this is a problem, and then perhaps it goes to the state, because clearly it is a state road, I know that, but I mean, it needs to still be addressed, because Department of Health has clearly enunciated that sound is an integral part, as well as light, in offsetting their own capable pollutions for the public.
Yeah, I was going to, as a follow-up to that, that's what I was going to say, that is designated as a state road, which means that the state controls the type of vehicles, and that's because of the Steamship Authority. And the fact that the traffic to the Steamship Authority goes down the Woods Hole Road, which is why the state made a swap with the town some years ago, and said that they would be responsible for the Woods Hole Road. And that's because those vehicles needed to get to the island. So I think, I don't know, I think town council will have to review this and see whether or not, well, we don't have any control over, but to see whether or not how we might be able to influence the state in taking some action as you request.
The other thing is that I'm going to ask as the applicant, you have a pretty wide window, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm sure you follow that this board has wrestled long and hard with another issue in this town with noise, and specifically the witching hours at 12 midnight to 4 a.m. So I'm just throwing that out there. That's a large window, 9 o'clock, because we still have boats that are coming back. I know, sir, I'm just trying to get,
I know.
I'm trying to help you here, not hurt you.
People sleep at all different times, and this is a generous portion for work. I mean, I think it's real simple.
I'm afraid I'm a little bit concerned that the same people who are saying they need to get their sleep are asking that the turbines run 24 hours a day. And
Well, that's a separate issue entirely. Let's not go there right now. All right, any other questions about this article? All right, thank you very much. All right, Ms. Driscoll, Article 27, to establish a mitigation fund. Representing Ms. Driscoll in the article?
I am representing Ms. Driscoll. She could not be here. She wanted to be here, and she was trying to be here, and she may still come, but here we have the time. So I would like to present the article to see if the town will vote to establish, which one are you taking, mitigation funds?
The mitigation, yes.
As a dedicated part of the Renewable Energy Stabilization Account to provide mitigation to residential structures, properties as deemed real and appropriate through a vetting process established by the Board of Selectmen or their designee. The mitigation fund is subsidized by 10% of the annual net metering revenue or percent amount deemed appropriate by the Board of Selectmen. That is already deposited into the Renewable Energy Stabilization Account. Monies expended from the mitigation fund shall be authorized by the Board of Selectmen or their designees to ensure mitigation options are appropriate and resolute. So, in explanation, the town has received varied complaints by residents in a proximity of 1/3 mile of the town-owned turbines. The mitigation fund will allow the town to set aside monies from the operation of the turbines to help pay for mitigation options for homeowners. The Board of Selectmen would establish a vetting process, i.e. a mediator with qualified credentials and so on, to determine the mitigation amount and solution. The 10% of the net metering revenue is from monies NSTAR pays back to the town of Falmouth, and the annual amount will be a function of the operation of the turbines.
Questions from the board? Seems pretty straightforward, actually.
Quite straightforward, yes.
All right, well, if there are no questions or comments, All right. You're here also for the next article, which is Article 28.
Is that the number now? To see if the town will vote to operate the town-owned municipal wind turbines at the wastewater treatment facility. Full-time, as per the manufacturer's specifications. In explanation, under the current 7 to 7 a.m. curtailment, which has changed, so this would change, the town is losing about $500,000 per year. There is no scientific evidence of adverse health or of adverse real estate value impacts as a result of wind turbine operation, including the town-owned turbines. There is thus no justification for curtailment other than that specified by the manufacturer. For example, extreme wind events such as hurricanes or icing and so on.
Questions from the board? Again, pretty straightforward. All right. Hearing no questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
All right. And before we go, we have 3 articles for the water quality management, but we also have, there's Article 29, which there's maybe some confusion here. Mr. Kissel?
Yes.
Your article, if you wouldn't mind coming to the, because you were invited this evening, but reading your article, Article 29, you're asking town meeting to direct the planning board. And usually the Board of Selectmen does not make recommendations on planning board articles because it is a separate elected board. And I don't know if the board, how the board wants to proceed with this, if it will put the ball back in the planning board's court, or if we want to hear what the petitioner has to say and perhaps make a recommendation.
I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Okay. My name is Mark Kissel. I live at 115 Old Dock Road, and I was a 30-year part-time resident here in Falmouth, and now I'm a permanent resident as of this past February 6th. And if you remember, shortly after February 6th, the town was inundated, as well as a good part of Massachusetts, with a major, major storm, and power lines were down and so forth. And the article that I'm proposing is actually in 2 parts. One, directing, asking the planning board to undertake a study to look at all of the overhead power lines in the high velocity zone areas here in town. And then the second part would be to make recommendations as to what sections of the town, mainly my personal interest is that we would consider roads like Surf Drive, Ocean Avenue, and so forth, where the overhead power lines are along the shoreline. And those along the shoreline, and piggybacking on what Mr. Jones said, we're fortunate here in Falmouth where we've got the enjoyment occasionally of some wonderful, wonderful sunsets. And unfortunately, a lot of our public roads along the beaches and so forth are blighted by these overhead lines, which in my opinion and a lot of people in town are really a blight on the visual blight on the environment. And so the second part of my article was that after the report is that the board would consider proposing that going forward that these overhead lines be removed and placed underground. And by accomplishing that, 1, you get rid of the unattractiveness of the overhead lines. 2, you improve obviously safety, and 3, there was obviously a major negative impact, economic impact on all of the people that were affected here in town by lines going down and so forth. So I think it's a very worthwhile charge. I know the town, I don't know how many years ago, we had power lines running down Main Street here in Falmouth, and an initiative was undertaken, and now those lines have been, I think they were serviced, the stores and whatever, by back lots and so forth. We have underground coming here in the town hall, and certainly helps to improve the aesthetic quality of and appearance of our town, and obviously makes our town much more desirable. We're fortunate. We have a very, very attractive town, and this is just another step to make it much more attractive. doing this. So I thank you for your service. I was once a public servant myself, and I lived in Sherburne for 47 years and was a member of the planning board there for a dozen years or so. But anyway, maybe the planning board is the step that I should be first making this, submitting it to them. But I think you control all the articles that go on the warrant. So.
Well, the petitioner's articles by default do go on the warrant, and the board is tasked with making recommendations on petitioner's articles. But usually when a petitioner's article deals with the planning board, we defer to the planning board, and the board may yet do that. We're not making recommendations this evening.
Yeah.
We're simply hearing from the petitioners.
Right, yeah. My inline goal is obviously to try to improve the aesthetics of certainly the roads along the shoreline, along the beaches, which are at the moment in several cases marred by very unattractive overhead lines. And, the more with communications going forward and so forth, the more it seems like more of the utilities are looking to add more lines. And then some poles we've got 6 or 7 lines hanging off the poles, which certainly don't add to the aesthetics on a positive basis anyway. So.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In the language in your article, you refer to cost as that the cost of putting the utilities underground would come from increases to the utility costs to the homeowners affected? Is that what you're suggesting?
In the general laws of the Commonwealth of Mass, I believe it's Chapter 166, Section 22, it enables the towns, cities and towns in Massachusetts to instruct the utilities to do this. And the cost for doing it would be borne by everybody in the town. So every meter in the town of Falmouth would basically pay back, reimburse the utility for that. And generally, from the investigations I've done, it probably can add 2 or 3% to the monthly cost. So I don't know how many thousands of, let's say, N-Star meters we have here in Falmouth, but I assume it's, I don't know, I'll just grab 15, 18, 20, 25,000 meters and so forth. So
I just wanted to say about 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, the homeowners on Chappaqua Road, going from, say, around Chappaqua Road where Old Dock Road meet, all the way out to the island, those homeowners worked with N-Star and asked that their utilities be put underground, and there was an agreement to do that, and the homeowners all agreed to pay for that. The problem now is that N-Star hasn't been able to schedule the work in almost 3 years to do it. So I haven't followed up on that in a while, but I do know that happened about 3 or 4 years ago, and it still hasn't happened. And then the last storm,
and I'll tell you, I'm the one
You're the
that headed
one.
up that whole effort, all right?
Then
So,
you-
okay, so, and anyway, I went to Tom May, CEO of N-Star, and tried to do a public-private partnership thing and so forth, and that program is at the moment on hold. Because the Verizon people threw us a major curveball in terms of cost. So the private funding is, I'm still trying to accomplish that, but it's very difficult. We went from a roughly just shy of $400,000 project to do 14 poles to over $500,000. So maybe we'll be able to pull it off, I don't know, but anyway, so. But it's interesting. I certainly will leave, if you'd like, I can leave.
Well, we want to focus on the article at hand for right now, so.
With all due respect, so what you're proposing is that the folks inland pay for you to get a better view.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Well,
I wouldn't say-
what you're proposing is that everybody in the town who has electrical service, their rates would go up for those folks who are in the velocity zone, who ultimately, and you keep hitting on aesthetics versus the reality of.
There are certainly a dozen or so roads that, in the town of Falmouth, that people enjoy the beaches and so forth. So I think the whole town is benefiting from it.
I realize that, but surely the folks who have their house and the poles are between them and the ocean are going to benefit the most.
Aesthetically, yes.
Okay.
From the service
Right,
point of
okay.
view, who knows?
Right. Well, that's another question I really would like to answer.
From a safety point of view.
But if we were in a flood zone, in a velocity zone, I don't know whether putting stuff underground and then you have all of those junction boxes that are going to be in a flood zone versus, we're putting houses up, we're putting buildings up. Why wouldn't you leave the lines up instead of putting them underground where there'd be a hazard of flooding them?
I'm not an electrical engineer, but certainly it's commonplace. I can cite that the country of Germany is in a program. I know this is off the subject. In a program,
We're done with Europe. Everyone brings up Europe. That's all right. We'll drop it at that.
No. They're putting everything, all high tension lines, everything in the country of Germany underground. Their program, it's a multi-year program.
Okay.
Well, if I might comment, the 3 poles that came down in the last storm came down at the beach, not in front of anybody's home.
That's correct.
They were right on Chappaquiddick Beach, and those are the
Actually, there were 6 poles that came down.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Well, thank you very much. All right, and we have 3 articles relating, the Water Quality Management Committee has brought them forward under the auspices of the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Chairman? Article 41, 42, and 43. And seeing as you folks are presenting all 3 of them here, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric Turkington, Precinct 1, Chairman of the Water Quality Management Committee. We appreciate the board submitting these 3 articles on behalf of the committee. And we have 3 members of the committee who are going to speak on each one of these individually. They were submitted 3 weeks ago, and since that time, we've received input from town council and the planning board and other entities. So our expectation is that there'll be some tweaking in reliance on these comments that we've received. But tonight, we're here to explain the articles as written. And the first one is the Article 41, the flow neutral bylaw. And John Waterbury and Steve Layton worked on this one. John, would you come up and tell us about that?
Yeah, the 2 that are marked should be sufficient.
I'm John Waterbury, a member of the Water Quality Management Committee. This bylaw is one that the committee developed. It was a working group. We also got a lot of help from Brian Curry from the Planning Department. And as Eric just said, it has been reviewed by both the Planning Board and the Board of Health today. The scope of this bylaw is considerably more restricted than what the Board of Health worked on a number of years ago, where we had been working on a nutrient management bylaw that encompassed the entire watersheds that we were working on at the time. And this now is a bylaw which just encompasses those areas served by public sewers. And the primary reason that we're pursuing it at the moment is because it is a requirement of the zero interest loan program that we have a flow neutral bylaw in place to qualify for that loan program. And the reason, of course, that the state is insisting on that is that they recognize that as you sewer, if you don't have some way of controlling the flow, things just mushroom out of control. And so the secondary reason then is that it helps us cap the flows of the areas that are sewered so that we don't exceed the permits of our treatment facilities. So the features of this bylaw are that the main features are that property owners are allowed to keep by right that which they already have. So that if you have a quarter-acre lot and a 5-bedroom house, you're grandfathered so that you get to keep that. Then any residential lot is by right allowed to have a 4-bedroom house on it. So that if you have a 2 or a 3-bedroom house on a small lot, this bylaw will allow you to increase the bedrooms to 4 by right. And if you have a lot that's more than an acre, you're allowed 1 bedroom for every 10,000 square feet of lot size. In non-residential areas, you are allowed by right to increase your flow by 10% before you have to ask for a variance.
Can I ask questions along the way, Mr.? Sure. This 10% increase, what happens if the lot's vacant?
For new residential lots?
No, non-residential, so we have a piece of business property.
Right.
That's vacant, a vacant lot. How do you get, adding 10% increase on 0 is still 0?
Well, if you go to Title V, and let's just take for an example, you have a restaurant that you want to build on a lot. Title V says that you are allowed a certain amount of flow for each seat in a restaurant, and so that you would be granted that flow, which is you're entitled to by Title V.
Okay, but that doesn't say that there. And we need to put that in there if you're going to have this bylaw passed.
Well, there was a new development.
I think it's
Okay, I didn't see it.
It allows 110 gallons per day per 10,000 square feet.
Is that
non-residential new development?
Okay, okay.
And then there's a variance procedure built in. The Board of Selectmen are the variance granting board. It's a 2-step procedure before a variance can be granted. If someone wants more flow than what we grant by right, they first have to have the water superintendent verify that there is available capacity at the treatment plants. And then by referral from the Board of Health, that the flow they're requesting or the number of bedrooms they're requesting, they could cite on their lot using the rules of Title V without significant variances. And then the Board of Selectmen would be able to grant that variance for additional flow.
Could I make a suggestion, and perhaps this would be something that the board might want to consider? Under the variance section 180-42, it mentions that after a public hearing of which notice has been given by publication in a newspaper of general circulation and posting with the town clerk for a period of no less than 14 days prior to the date of the hearing. Now, I'm assuming that posting with the town clerk, obviously we have a board down the hall where these postings are made, but there's some provision in here also to make mention of posting on the town's website for 14 days, a minimum of 14 days, I think would be appropriate. You know, we live in 2013, and I think virtually everybody, and certainly a significant portion of Falmouth's population, seeks information about what's going on in town affairs on the town's website.
That's an easy fix.
If there's no objection from the board. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions or comments about, this is Article 41? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to Article 42.
Article 42, this is part of the board's direction and the committee's direction, knowing that we're going to be hopefully sewering the Little Pond area, that it be done in such a way that the cost to the homeowner, which would be dependent on what the board chose by way of betterment, that those costs be made as low as possible for as many homeowners as possible, so to keep the whole thing affordable. Virginia Valiela and Ron Zweig were the study group that put this article together. And Ron is here tonight to spell out the details. These are special legislation elements. It would go into a bill that would go to the legislature for enactment because they are variations from the current state law.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you, the board. Ron Zweig, Precinct 1, member of the Water Quality Management Committee. And basically what this legislation can do is to provide you another tool in your toolbox. The Board of Selectmen's toolbox in terms of being able to make decisions regarding how to proceed with particularly cost recovery of the investment for wastewater management systems. And what this legislation essentially will do, there are two sections to it as noted, but it will do four things. But one thing, before I get to those, I'll tell you one thing it won't do, which you will do, or you might, at your pleasure, of course, would consider is that depending on whether there would be betterments or not, or whether it would be a portion, part of the cost would be as a betterment or a lien for cost recovery, and part of it in the tax base, which is sort of similar to what happened in Silver Beach. That is something in terms of percentages. We're very happy to assist and provide any information we can to help you in that decision. It could be possible that it could all be in the tax base, or it could be in the property tax, or it could be all betterments, or it could be a combination of the two. That would be something you may wish to consider in the future. So right now, what the legislation does, and I think it's useful to read through it a little bit, is that that one thing is that we have also looked at it in terms of it being what's called, looking right now as a uniform cost basis, which is basically that the cost we divided by the number of units, which is residences and businesses. And then the businesses may have a slightly different weighted number of units assigned to them depending on their water use. But in looking at Section 1 and 2, what we did was that we looked at the experience in the state, throughout the state, with regard to the town's interests, and then looked for legislation that may have already been enacted, which would be similar to what we would envision, or you may wish to consider putting forward. And so if you look at Section 1, notwithstanding any general or special law to the contrary, the town of Falmouth may assess and collect interest on an unpaid balance of a sewer betterment assessment at a rate equal to the net rate of interest chargeable to the town for the project to which the assessment relates. Okay, what that means basically is that the interest rate would be the same as the rate that the town gets. So that's why, as Eric mentioned, we're trying to keep the costs for capital investments. Capital investment involves design, engineering, and construction. For those aspects of projects, the interest that the town gets, so if we got a 0% interest loan, as John mentioned, we would then basically on lend that amount to the homeowners and the owners at the same rate. So therefore, it keeps the cost down. We're trying to minimize costs to the homeowners. So essentially, and we found that in 2006, Mattapoisett had enacted such legislation, and so there is a precedent that has been done, and so it sort of won't be completely new. And as far as anyway, that was a finding, and that's Section 2. Section 1. For Section 2, there are two elements in it, and one is that jumping ahead a little bit, but notwithstanding any general or special law to the contrary, the town of Falmouth may apportion all sewer assessments or unpaid balances of assessments over a period not to exceed 30 years. Now, how did 30 years come up as a figure? Oftentimes it is 20 years. It is 20 years, but we're suggesting 30 years, which means the payments would be less because it's a longer period of time. Moreover, the state laws indicate that the useful life, which means economic useful life of sewer systems, is about 30 years before your maintenance, repair, and upgrades, like we're doing with the wastewater treatment plant, come into play, and therefore the repayment would be matched to basically the estimated cost of the system in place. It doesn't mean that the system will disappear after 30 years. It just means that the economic sustainability.
Question, Can we bond for 30 years?
Yes, I think with
I don't think we can bond for 30 years. That's why I'm,
The 0% loan, right now, the law is limited to 20 years.
okay, so,
Can I
and,
I can make a comment on that?
oh, sure, go ahead.
The town of Barnstable also increased their betterment to 30 years too for the residents. The problem is the towns have been held by state law to 20 years. So we have asked the Senate President's office to see if they can put together some legislation that will allow towns to also have 30 years to make their payments, so that otherwise the financials get really complicated if the town's on a 20 and the residents are on a 30. So that's currently in the works.
Right, but what I'm saying is, we're moving this forward this fall. And if we can't currently bond for 30 years, what do? Bond for 20 years and then go back and refinance after the 20 years? We don't know what the rates would be.
Not to get too much into this, but this allows the board to go to 30 years. It doesn't compel you. It gives you that option.
Okay.
You could go 10 years.
A question, though, if there's legislation or there's been some effort to reach out to the Senate leadership about this, why not incorporate that into this article and ask that, there be a section 3 or a section 1.5 that says, the town of Falmouth will be allowed to borrow for 30 years,
It's not
just to get that moving?
But, well, we'll have something, I think we'll know something before town meeting on that.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be just the town of Falmouth, it would be any town in the Commonwealth that on a betterment could go to,
I think our
could bond for
wastewater
30.
superintendent may have some insight as well.
Well, one thing I think we get confused between what the betterment law allows, and that's the period of time the town can recoup the money. That's 20 years set by the betterment law. Whether you can go to a 30-year bonding is a question of how much more risk you want to take for the 30 years, whether DEP may only give you a 20-year SRF, so then we have to assume any incremental costs. There's a good chance that DEP for these type of projects could give us a 30-year SRF grant. So it gets complicated. In fact, the Barnstable bylaw was restricted to them getting an appropriate SRF loan rate, so there wouldn't be a difference. And it gets fairly complicated. And I think the finance director and the town manager, assistant town manager, can work the financing out. But I think that's where people get confused, the betterment law and the period which we're allowed to bond.
On the issue of it costing less, really it's not going to cost less if we do 30 years. It's just the annual cost is less.
Spreading it out over a longer period.
Right.
Yeah, so
No, we pay back.
you're still paying the same amount whether it's 20 or 30 years under the section 2 that you're discussing right here.
Right, but it's more looking at affordability.
Per year.
Per year. I mean, yes, people have to pay longer, but if they can afford $1,000 versus $2,000 or something, then it's better. It's the option.
And this assumption is that we get the 0% loan, right? Because if we get the 2%, as we all know, you take a 30-year mortgage versus a 20-year mortgage. When you're paying those interest charges, you're paying interest for a multitude of years before you're actually hitting on the principal. So at least there's the flexibility for us to say it's 20 or 30 after we find out whether we get the SRF.
Right. The other thing is that the interest charge would be the same. It would be on, so if it was 0% or 2%, it would be on lent or charged that. So, and then the other element is that the payments would be equal. In other words, every year people would get the same bill. It would not be a decreasing form. So that was another element in this, and that was a lot happened in 2006. For example, Marion put in the 30-year rate in 2006, 30-year repayment period. Richmond put in the same payment every year, also in 2006. So there's a lot of activity in 2006. In looking back that far. So I think that what this idea at this point is that, again, this legislation doesn't tie anyone's hand, wouldn't tie anyone's hands. It gives you more options to consider. as more information comes in. And so we're doing this in a systematic way and to be discussed at town meeting.
Any last questions? Okay. Article 43.
Yeah, I think Ron summarized that one pretty well in his very first statement. This gives the board more tools in its toolbox when the time comes to set betterments and to keep the cost down for the homeowners. Article 43 is another piece of special legislation that relates to the eco toilet experiment that the town is involved in now. And Matt and Wynn Monroe were the study group that put this together, and Matt will explain it.
Thank you, Eric, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for your commitment to the town. I have a great deal of respect and admiration for what you do every
And
Monday
us
night.
for you as well. Could you identify yourself for the record, Matt, just so everybody knows?
I'm Matt Patrick. I'm
Thank you.
a resident of Precinct 7. Article 43, I'm not going to read it to you, but I'll tell you in Section 1, you have the ability to grant people an exemption from the betterment if they install an eco toilet, which is either a composting toilet or a urine diverting toilet. And I shouldn't say toilet, I should say toilets. To comply with our program, which is the other requirement, they have to convert all of their toilets to one of those eco toilets. And they also have to agree to be monitored over a period of years. They have to agree to Title V requirements and a reasonable fee to pay for that monitoring as set by the Board of Health. Section 2 would allow you to grant them to opt back in to the sewer if they decide to, but they would have to retroactively pay back the betterments to get there. And you might work out some payment schedule or something. But it's the Board of Selectmen has a lot of discretion built into this act. It is a home rule petition. We'd have to get it approved by the town meeting, and then it would have to go to our legislature to be approved there. And why are we doing this? Basically, we need to get more people into this program. The more people we have, the better sample of different installations that we'll have, the better our data set will be. For example, we're going to, and DEP is looking at this. I mean, this is an important program right here in the state, but also across the country, because people want to see what this produces. So the more participants we have, the better data set we will have, because they're going to be looking at averages, okay? Averages of how much nitrogen is removed from the house.
Is there a minimum number in order to have that better data? I mean, is there a number in your head that you're saying, we need this in Falmouth, this many?
No, the more the better. The minimum for the state, I think they're looking at 62.
Now, is that homes or is that the toilet itself?
Homes. I think that says it all. It's very, a lot of people are interested in this. It could be a real solution if we can show that it removes the regular amount of nitrogen from a home.
I'm going to play a little devil's advocate on part of this.
I'd expect nothing less from you, Mr.
Thank you. And it's something you might be able to figure out how to answer, is in your Section 2, if they want to opt back in. Unfortunately, once the Board of Selectmen votes a betterment fee, we can't change that. So when they opt back in, they're going to be part of a system and not helping contribute to bring down the cost of the rest of the system, that money would just merely go back into the general fund. So that's the current system in the town of Falmouth, and that's the only way it can happen, because we can't readjust the betterment for everybody else. So we need to think this through, because we don't know what the next generation or someone's kids are going to do, whether they're going to want to keep those eco toilets. And the question is, yeah, they want to jump back in the betterment system, but now they're the 101 person. The 100 people the betterment is set by, but they don't get the benefit of the extra person, or in your case, you're looking for 62 people. Say 62 of them all jump back in. Well, you know, I'm working on the town's behalf. We get the money, but the people who are paying for the betterment kind of get screwed.
I would defer to sewer manager.
I'm glad you're deferring.
First time.
You're not throwing something. Jerry Patamas, wastewater superintendent. I think what you're talking about is more along the lines of a connection fee, because you can't tax people twice. So that's one of the things as we move forward, the Water Quality Committee and the Finance Director and the Town Management need to look at is, should we consider some type of connection fee more than the $150 to tie in? Some towns charge $3,000 and $4,000, $5,000. It could be something, and we have to get Frank's input. It could be something that a connection fee will be equivalent to the fee that you avoided from the betterment. I don't know if that meets the tax laws, but you're right, it goes into the general fund.
So, but what I'm saying is, the folks who originally opted in on the betterment are going to be paying more for that collection system.
They'd be paying more than if everyone had jumped
done
in.
it
So if
originally.
you have, say you have 500 homes and 100 decide that they want to put in the eco toilets, now the rate is based on 400 homes, not 500 homes.
Correct.
Okay.
And then, say that extra 100 homes at some point in time want to opt back in. Those other folks' rate doesn't change.
Right.
They just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Let me just throw in some other facts that you should know. So far, we don't have anybody within the sewer district as currently outlined. So a lot of the people are outside anyway. They wouldn't be impacted by the betterments, nor paying, getting out of the betterments or paying back the betterments. We might, I don't know how many more we will get if this goes through that will be in the sewer area. I have to believe there could be a fix, a legislative fix, or possibly a town article legislative fix that would allow you to put that money into a reserve fund for the sewer. Mr. Suso might have some comments in that area, but I would think that you would be able to create some kind of a fund for even fixing the sewer. And we know right away, even though we think that it may take 20 or 30 years for the sewer system to break down, when I was a selectman, we were having to fix it within 5 or 10 years. There's always a lot of need for that capital to fix the odors, for example, that were coming from the pump stations. So I defer.
Well, the other thing too is you could have a limit on if someone wanted to opt in, they could not opt in before a certain date, so that they wouldn't, after just a few years, opt back in. They may have to wait a while to opt back in. That's one thing. But the other question I had was, do you have any idea on say a percentage basis, if the homeowner chose to do the eco toilets rather than the sewer, what the actual savings might be?
Well, that's the other thing we want to find out. I mean, it's very important that we get a wide range of installations to find out how much they cost. If it's a 2-story house or a single-story house, and if it has 2 or 3 bathrooms, 1 bathroom, all of that stuff will get put into the data set, so we can say, yeah, it's going to cost on average so much for a 2-story home with 3 bathrooms, and so much for a ranch house with 2 bathrooms. years. But that's important information to gather, and it's part of the study. To your point, I think it's very good. We build in, there's a lot of discretion left to the selectmen as to allowing people back in and to pay the betterment retroactively, and what you do with that. I just think you'll have a lot of flexibility.
I know, but the reason I'm bringing this up, though, is we have one or two of those folks that want to tie in New Silver Beach now. And there are folks over there that are saying, oh, that's well and good, you're going to get the $30,000, but my betterment doesn't get decreased. What I'm trying to do is task the town manager's office to find a way that those folks directly get the benefit. For us to fix the system, water rates and sewer rates are going to pay for that. It's not the betterment rates that's going to pay for that. So we need to find another alternative to do that.
And maybe an idea for future consideration is that, mentioned was a pool of money that might be going to repairs, but maybe that we could do something with a pool of money and say, okay, if those 100 people jump back in, then that money can be redistributed in the form of a refund, a tax refund, to those individuals who already are paying the betterment. I imagine that there's some things that we can come up with, but I think first we'd have to get through this before we even start thinking about that. So,
being a former state representative, anything is possible, I can tell you.
I like to hear that, actually. That's good to hear.
That's true.
Any other questions about Article 43? All right.
By way of sort of comfort to you all, that this piece would require people to sign up for this program right now. There won't be any service connected to it if everything goes according to the projections until 2017. So you'll know way ahead of the game who might be eligible for this, and there won't be many. It's out of the 1,700 sewer equivalent units that the town's contemplating in the Little Pond area. This program, if it were wildly successful, would have 62 participants, of whom maybe 10% might be in that area. One never knows, but it's a very small number. And this does require an act of the legislature, which, as Matt points out, can happen.
All right. Well, thank you all very much, and thank you to the other petitioners as well. We'll be making our recommendations, is next week? Next week. All right. It is 9:20. We've been here for over 2 hours. Do we want to take a brief recess, stretch our legs before we proceed with the rest of the agenda, or do we want to just keep plowing ahead?
Keep plowing ahead.
I heard one plowing ahead. Take a break.
Take a break.
All right, if we can keep it to 5 minutes, folks, we'll recess for 5 minutes and stretch our legs.
2.5 hours, yes. Time to stretch. I'm going to start requesting certain privileges.
Sometimes they're necessary.
Huh?
Yes.
They are.
Cavosa Excavating is a family-owned and operated company specializing in the installation of Title V septic systems. Cavosa Excavating is one of the largest septic system installers on Cape Cod. Whether it's upgrading your current system or installing a whole new system, Cavosa Excavating can do the job. Cavosa Excavating, 508-563-5530.
in communities of similar size, and that is how this has been established by personnel. The other position is the change would involve, currently it's a position that is deemed community preservation planner. One word would be changed from preservation to development, community development planner, and that is currently graded at an M6, and based upon an assessment again in personnel, that's suggested to be more appropriately a range of M5 for consistency within our organization. And lastly, police captain, that is a position that's currently graded in M9. There had been an effort some years past to upgrade that, I'm advised, and this would put it in its appropriate classification, which should be an M10. By contrast, the fire chief's position is graded in M11, so this is one step below that for the board's background information. And again, this information is based on survey data from the personnel department. And fundamentally, these are amendments as opposed to new creations, but there are some nuances, as I've noted, including no longer being covered by union collective bargaining agreements in the case of the first two positions. So we welcome the board's consideration of these adjustments.
I guess I need to clarify. I understand the police captain's is an amendment position of changing the grade level. The other three really do also require at some other point a deletion of a position. Is that correct? Are we just voting, adding those three positions tonight, and at some other point we're going to vote a deletion of the three positions?
Well, the principal office assistants appear only in collective bargaining agreements.
Okay.
So there is...
Because we do have articles in the warrant deleting those positions.
Oh, I apologize.
You're really deleting a position with a certain title, and then you just have another position with a different title.
Right, and I understand that for the police department and the fire department positions, and have no issue with that. I do have a little bit of issue on the other one, and am okay with voting to add the community development planner, but I guess I'd like to have more conversation about whether we actually do delete the community preservation planner, because I really do think there are some real needs for the community preservation committee that I would like to have more discussion about before proceeding with deleting that position. I understand the need, in our strategic plan that we voted this summer talked about increasing the role of community development within the planning department of the Board of Selectmen, really looking to push that forward. But I am concerned about, at the same time, necessarily reducing the support that the Community Preservation Committee is getting.
And maybe you can describe that a little bit more. It was my understanding that community preservation planner before was a half-time employee, and I thought that this was going to be one full-time employee that would do both roles. Am I mistaken?
This would expand the role as we're proposing it beyond the more limited hours in the past to expanded hours, and I would ask Heather if she could maybe comment on that further, maybe give a little better description of that.
Sure. In this last budget, the fiscal 2014 budget that we're currently in that budget year, that job went from a 32-hour position to a full-time position, taking on additional duties to support those much-needed services in historic preservation, affordable housing, to provide the same professional level of service that the Community Preservation Committee enjoys to both affordable housing and the Historical Commission as time allows within their job. In the vacancy that occurred as a result of that change in hours, we took another look at the job description, and with the help of our personnel director, taking a look at the organizational structure of the town, and particularly within the planning department, which that position is currently in this fiscal year. It's currently in the planning department, funded full-time, as of right this moment, as a grade 6. That it made more sense organizationally within the town's structure to have at least a grade difference between both planning staff and that department. And remember, those are similarly rated to other very highly qualified positions in the town, including the conservation administrator and the zoning administrator. We felt that this position, working in that role, we didn't just feel, we evaluated it and rated it against other similar positions. And this is still a very highly rated $60,000 a year plus job that would support the Community Preservation Committee in the same way that the Community Preservation Planner would. The concept of not deleting that one might provide some comfort, and I don't think there would be any strong objection to doing that. But this really is an organizational issue, not a change, not a significant change of duties.
And because the Community Preservation Committee does have the finances to be able to fund a planner if the position still existed in their administrative fees structure, is that correct?
If it were budgeted and appointed by the town manager, yes.
Any other questions?
I'm just thinking about what was just said. It's up to the town manager to decide the position for each one of those organizations. The town manager decides that.
Does the
Is
hiring?
that was just,
Yes, the town manager is the appointing authority, correct.
the town manager's so it would be 4 organizations? Is it 4 groups that this one person would be the administrative assistant? Is that?
Do you want to summarize that?
This is a professional community development planner position, similar to the position that has historically been in our community. It would be the lead support person to the Community Preservation Committee, as it has been, as also had been contemplated and included in the job description that currently exists, would support housing and historic preservation and others as their time is available.
With the answer to town manager?
Town planner,
The town planner.
appointed by the town manager, yes.
Any other questions? So we need to create and/or amend these 4 positions. And I guess the question was raised about deleting the positions. That's something that wouldn't happen until after town meeting, correct? Because absent the town meeting vote, if town meeting doesn't approve these changes, then there's nothing for us to delete, so.
Yes. And Mr. Chairman, could I just reiterate that this suggested change in structure is consistent with the directive this board has provided to me to explore consolidation and organizational efficiency within the town, and it is born out of that, out of responding to that directive from this board.
I make a motion to create the positions as presented.
Create or amend the positions?
Amend the positions, okay.
Second.
A motion and a second to amend the positions is needed, or as presented, excuse me. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? I think there'll be plenty of opportunity for public discussion on town meeting floor regarding the creation and amending of the positions. That's why I didn't take any at this point in time. All right. The next item on our agenda is an application which has been withdrawn. And so that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the committee handbook. Per the board's prior discussions, we've got an amended version, or an updated draft, if you will, of the committee handbook. And I would call your attention to, let's see, page 4, thank you. There's section H, removal to be determined. This is a placeholder pending the work to be finished by town council regarding the process for removing committee members for cause. And as recommended as well, the open meeting law is now Appendix A. It begins on page 7. And so if there are significant changes to the open meeting law, and it includes The page 11, you'll see is purposes for executive session. So if there are any changes to this, it can be easily added or removed without significantly changing the rest of the policy or rest of the handbook. Appendix B is the conflict of interest law. Again, per the recommendation, that's on page 15. And I do believe on page 22, as we had discussed, it does make note of the fact that all regular and special municipal employees, and that includes appointed committees, are required to complete the online training for the conflict of interest law and to submit evidence of such training to the state. And those pages follow that. So these are the draft and the recommendations that have been made thus far. We have received some public comments from individuals who would like the board to abstain from distributing the committee handbook at this time, pending some additional public feedback. And so I would present that at this point to the board, how we want to proceed.
Could we distribute it to the chairs of committees for their feedback, and they can choose to take it to their boards or not? But try to give them a month from now, saying, we're ready to go, we'd love to have some feedback, but if we don't get any, we're going to go ahead.
I think that's a really good idea, to distribute it to the chairman of the boards and let their committees look at it. Because I look at attendance, and I notice it says unexcused absence. So if you had an excused absence, you might be gone for 6 months. I mean, you could, if you were seriously ill or something like that. So I just thought it was pretty liberal in terms of the amount of absences, like half the total number of meetings. I would not be too happy if I had a committee member that missed half the meetings in the course of a year. So, I don't know, because we always say to people when they apply, do you have the time to do the work? And if you don't anticipate that people would be missing 50% of the meetings. It's just a comment right now. I think the standard is too low.
Any other feedback?
But we might get that in feedback from committee chairman.
So I'm hearing general consensus that we submit this to all of the committee chairs, ask them for their feedback within the month. Perhaps also post this to the town's website, so any member of the general public, if they want to look at the copy and offer some feedback, and then we'll put this on the agenda for a month from now.
Do you want to give it an actual date? When we say a month, let's
Good
give it
idea.
an
Well,
actual date.
We are meeting on the first and third Thursdays of every month, so if we look at our calendar, the
7th and 21st in October.
Mondays.
Yeah, so the 7th and 21st of October, so if we look at the 4th of November.
That's great.
That's enough time.
It puts us about a month away, a little bit more than a month.
So we would put it on the agenda, so you would want feedback before that meeting, right?
Yeah.
Next week.
Well, when's the next meeting in November? Because by the time the committees get it, it'll be later this week, and that'll be, some committees will have already met in October. So if we make it too early in November, they wouldn't have met.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the committee chair distributing this to their members and getting the written feedback back.
That's okay.
And funneling it back to us. I think 30 days, we want to make this happen. I think that's a fair. So if we say the 4th of November, we have to have all feedback back so that the board is going to schedule a discussion on the 4th of November as to how we're going to move forward with this.
This handbook has sat in a black hole for a number of years.
Yeah,
so.
well, there's a general consensus here that we want to move this along, so. All right, so I don't know that we need a vote. We're all in agreement?
No, we're all in agreement.
All right.
Feedback by the 30th. If you need the feedback by.
All right. So the next item on our agenda, we have a draft special events policy for the board's consideration. And again, this is based on...
I'd like to have just a personal opinion. This is very helpful, and I think that whoever put this together. How did we get this? Was it Heather?
It's been a work in progress.
Depends on whether you like it or not.
Because then I'll have something else to say. I want to say I am very pleased to have this information. It's very helpful. And I'm glad that we're all reading it at the same time, so that as things are happening, this is a good document.
So there are a few items for feedback. It's really presented to the board so you can see the train of thought of the staff in taking on special event permitting as a staff function, which was a vote of the board. It addresses that issue, and it also sets forth some of the policies for issuing those special events permits. There are a few items that the board needs to deliberate on, but first and foremost, I wanted to get a sense that the board was comfortable with the direction we were going, and that was setting up a staff task force that would include those groups that generally write referrals, having that group meet on at least a quarterly basis, more regularly if needed. And ideally, this type of a task force may ultimately not be necessary once we get into a practice, but we'd come back to the board with that kind of an item. But it's modeled after the Traffic Advisory Committee. Am I using the right title? Yes. It's been a very effective committee in helping us make good judgments about different traffic issues. So that's the model. There's a few questions for the board. They include, are there particular types of events or definitions of events that you'd like to make sure come back to the board? So I want you to think about that and maybe get back to us on that. I had a few just thoughts on what they might be, but I really would look to the board to suggest what types of issues you want to make sure are brought back to the full board, if there are any. And that, I think, was really the biggest issue. But again, it is in draft form, and hope to sharpen it up and make it a little bit more user-friendly than it is.
I think we also need to maybe take some parallel tracks here, because one of the limiting in this would be limiting the use of certain green spaces. So I think we need to be able to, as we spoke at our retreat, potentially open up or look at some other areas where we could do those spots, whether it be Shore Street Extension, the Recreation Department, maybe the staff could look at those and see what it would take to make them available, and then maybe at some point in time bring them back to the board. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
I was going to suggest that we actually, in doing that, actually list the venues where we believe that events can occur, wherever they are, and just list them all out. You know, like Peg Noonan Park, the Marine, the band shell, the Marine Park, wherever they are in town, not like the fairgrounds, but like the bike path. Somebody wants to use the bike path, whatever, and then we list the venues, and then actually look at the impact of events on that particular venue. And if the impacts are greater, then maybe the fee would be greater to use that particular area. I mean, even the beaches that are used for weddings. But that, because it was such a eye-opener to look at that calendar for this year, from April to September, to see all the events that took place in the town and where they were. And sometimes they're just on the street, or they're, like the Classic Car Show, just this past weekend is spread out in a way. It was on the library lawn, and they used the Morse Pond School and so forth. So I think it would be helpful to actually have locations and venues where certain events could occur, what the requirements would be, what the impact is, what the variation in cost of a permit might be because of that particular place. I know that's a little more work, but
I just want to comment that I don't think it's a bad suggestion. It seems to me that would be one of the first order of business of the task force, is getting them together, to use this overarching policy.
Right.
I can tell you that both Julie and I heard a report from the Fire Inspectional Services Department that they're working with the Police Department and Public Works Department on their own policy for special events. So there will be, I think, improvements once we get a process in place. But this is step one.
And I think this weekend is a great example why we need a committee like this. We had so many competing interests. It was wonderful, but there were competing interests. You had the Striper Fest. If you wanted to park at the rec center, you couldn't because we had the emergency preparedness thing, and we didn't even have enough parking for the folks who wanted to go to that. Then we also had the Dream Cruise and then the Harvest Festival, and you know, there were a multitude of events. And folks looking at just the big picture, planning these out, might suggest the weekend before or the weekend after for some of these bigger events like that.
And then the last item, there was one other item I want the board to think about. On the Traffic Advisory Committee, there is a selectman's representative that sits on that, and I guess we want the question to be asked as to whether the board saw themselves as wanting to have a role on that as well.
In this?
Yeah, it's not drafted in here, but it occurred.
I think that would be appropriate to have a selectman be on that.
All right, so we've got the draft. Do we want to do something similar with this, say 30 days, or do we want to do it sooner? Perhaps later in October, seeing as we're not sending this out to all the committee chairs at this point. This is more or less feedback from the board at this time.
I just want to say that it would be better sooner versus later, because a lot of folks are now already trying to reserve spots for next year. And if we're going to take a couple of these spots off the table, we really need to do it, either that or delay the applications until we can actually, I mean, I suppose we could do that, put a moratorium on any events, approving any events until after we come up with the policy.
But I do think it's important that we get some public feedback to the change of Pegman Park that is being proposed in this policy.
Yeah. And also the Falmouth Heights, you know, the field there that they use for soccer, that certain things could happen on that field, but they have to be limited because of how it's used for other purposes. So I think maybe that's a committee, or Heather's group that she's working with.
You remember that, you know, we set policy, and a lot of the details get carried out by the town manager in his office, so.
Could we be ready by the 21st of October?
Well, I think we could.
Yeah, I think we can.
Depends how much input you want from others.
Right.
You might be better served to wait till that first meeting in November just to give you
I think we're kind of loading up November because of town meeting. I think there's, so I was just...
Well, we look at these meetings in advance, so why don't we tentatively say the 21st of October? And if, as we approach that date, we find that that there needs to be more time, or if, you know, the 4th isn't too heavily loaded, that, you know, we can extend it to the 4th. But, you know, as noted with the committee handbook, that we want to move this along, and especially where there may be some impacts to applicants who are looking to schedule events, you know, try to get this sooner than later. So we'll be looking tentatively for the 21st then, and if we could post this also to the town's website so that we can allow the public to provide any feedback on this.
Will do.
Last comments or questions? Excellent. All right, thank you all. This is always good. All right, determine the wind turbines hours of operation. We had at our workshop, or our last meeting at the library, once we determined that we were going to run the turbines for 16 hours on and 8 hours off, and we said we would come back to the hours of operation. So we have to decide where those 8 hours are going to lie during the evening. We do have recommendation here from the town manager's office based on the consultant.
Correct.
For 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I'm going to open it up to some public comment here, given that we're talking about affecting some of the neighbors. Would be willing to hear from the neighbors as to what time frame might be easier to work with. than others. There's obviously, we're looking at 8 hours during the evening, 9 to 5, 10 to 6, 11 to 7. Feedback from the public? Anyone?
Mark Finner in Precinct 6. First, I'd like to say I don't like this 8-hour at all. But if that's going to be the case, I think, firstly, you have to consider children. And a starting time of 11 o'clock, I mean, you know, let's face it, young kids sleep 10 hours a day. I mean, you would have to shut them down earlier than that, or you're just going to torture these kids. You're torturing everyone anyway, but I'd just like to throw that in.
Okay. Anyone else?
Malcolm Donald, 124 Ambleside Drive. Yeah, I think a good operation time is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Mr. Donald, we've got 8 hours to work with.
Oh,
and that's
okay. Well, there are neurocognitive consequences of sleep deprivation to young children, resulting in obesity, ADD. There's a whole myriad of things if they don't get their sleep. So I don't know. I guess I can't help you then.
Mark Cool, 250 Fire Tower Road. And I just have a question through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Suso. The hours 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. advised by the consultants. Did they give any reasons? I mean, what was the basis behind those hours?
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like. We requested of the consultant that they look at the statistical information available to them on wind turbine wind patterns and wind turbine projected operations and suggest what they deem to be the optimum 16 hours of operation, and that is the recommendation that they gave us.
A follow-up question then. The consultants didn't take into consideration any statistics from complaint patterns?
We asked them for wind operational information, which the state has available to them and the consultant, to my understanding, and that is what was the basis of the recommendation.
Thank you.
Mr. Donald, before you go to the microphone, would anyone else like to say anything? All right.
Malcolm Donald again. Who are the, I'm wondering who the consultants were?
Sustainable Energy Advantage?
Correct.
And where sustainable? And
That's posted on the website in the town's exhibits on all the financial projections. Their name and contact is on all those pieces of paper, all those exhibits.
And can you give us a general background on what their
Can we just try to get hours of recommendation from the public?
Yeah, Mr. Donald, let's
We've
try
had
to
this
focus
debate.
on, at
And I
this
would love to
point,
get some input as to what hours would work best. I mean,
because absent and I see where you're going with this, absent recommendations or absent feedback from the public, we may just go with the recommended operating plan from the consultants. So I understand, folks, you're frustrated. You want more than 8 hours at night. Obviously, children may need more than 8 hours of sleep at night. I've got 3 kids of my own. I understand that, but our hands are tied at this point. We've made a decision based on situations that we've already talked about, and retreading old ground isn't going to help us at this point. If any of you have any suggestions, whether you prefer 10 to 6 to 11 to 7 or 9 to 5, Give us the feedback now, folks. This is your opportunity. And if you don't want to speak up and say something, please don't get upset with us if we give you an hours of operation that you're not happy with. That's where we're at right now.
Hello, everyone. My name's Dave Moriarty, resident of Falmouth. You're faced with an awful decision. I don't envy any of you. And in light of the situation, I believe the best operating time for the wind turbines would be from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Hopefully the children of Falmouth are early risers, but at least the children will have an opportunity to get to bed at a reasonable time. Of course, I have other opinions, but I won't express them tonight, but I think that is the most sensible thing to do in the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Finner?
Again, I don't like this, but I think children are most important, and I think 8 to 4 in the morning would be better. I mean, allow them to at least get to sleep. But do what you like.
Anyone else? All right. Well, we've got the recommendation from the consultant. 8 to 4 was something that hadn't been considered, or at least I certainly hadn't considered that, but that does.
I'm concerned
an interesting
about the
point.
4 o'clock time being as close to when we had potential DEP violations, and that 4 o'clock we do know is a very quiet ambient time, and that I think we would be in danger of potentially having exceedances if we go that route. I would be 9 to 5 is where I was thinking I was heading as a potential recommendation.
I think this board did a reach in giving the 8 hours of not operating these turbines. And we will continue to be scrutinized for the income that they bring in versus the debt service that we have, as well as the operations and maintenance. I think it behooves us to be able to pick a window of that 8 hours that provides the most efficient operation of those turbines for the longevity of keeping those 8 hours as a potential of keeping these folks and giving them an 8-hour window. So, everyone sleeps at different times, and the bottom line is most kids, unless they're very, very small, and they're up and down all night, the infants, most kids try to put off bedtime as long as they can. It's tougher to get them up in the morning than it is to get them down. And I think that the 11 to 7 is a fair window. It's still very quiet in that area, especially it's going to be dark. Once kids get to sleep, it's pretty tough to get them up unless the sun's up. I tend to lean towards the 11 to 7. That's my thoughts.
And some of the preliminary work I did looking at Power Dash and the difference in output, and I don't have the actual data, the difference in production of electricity, I know this is what they recommend, is not hugely different from 9 to 5 as it is from 11 to 7. I still think the increased benefit for sleep at that point, with a minimal increase in energy, it makes it worth their while.
I think there are two things worth considering. One is that, and I'm going to echo what Mr. Jones said, that I think the other number we saw here, this is 91, I think we saw 94 with the last set of data, and that was not optimized for any particular hour of the night. So we're talking about a very insignificant number in the grand scheme of things. But more importantly, looking at overall time periods, in 9 to 5, actually, the more I think about it, makes more sense, because even in the summertime, by 9 o'clock, the sun is already set. I think 8:30 the sun sets at the latest in June. So by 9 o'clock, you've gone past twilight. It's dark now. The sun does, you start to see twilight and the sun rising 5 in the morning. So that 8-hour window really does fall within darkness from 9 to 5 during the shortest, or the shortest nights of the year, the longest days of the year. And then on the other side, at any given time of the year, kids do tend to go to bed earlier than later. Whether they want to stay up later or not is one thing, but I know I had always tried, especially as my kids were younger, tried to get them in bed by 9 o'clock. 10 or 11 o'clock was really pushing it. If they're asleep at 5 in the morning, they may not wake up, even if the turbine is starting up. And so they might get another hour or two out of that. But of course, if they're not going to bed until 10 or 11 because the turbines are operating and being bothersome to them, they're not going to be able to make that sleep up in the morning. They're already going to be starting at a deficit. So I'm tending to go along with Doug on this one, that 9 to 5 might be a better option. Anyone else? I'll make a motion that we set the hours of operation. Or the shutdown sorry?
Did you make any motion?
Yeah, I just said my two.
Okay,
He can make a motion.
excuse me.
All right.
Okay.
So my motion would be that we set the off hours to be 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I think it's too early, 9 o'clock. I mean, but that's, you made the motion, my thoughts.
Well, it's sort of splitting the difference, too. Right now, we've been going 7 to 7, so by going 9 to 5, we're taking 2 hours off each end, as opposed to, say, 11 to 7, which takes 4 hours off the front end. And like I said, that has some disadvantages, I think, from a sleep perspective for children, or even for adults who, if we're used to, some people, my dad was in the Army, and at sunset he'd go to bed, and at sunrise he'd get up, and so when the days were the shortest, it was a 9 to 5 proposition for him. And those folks who do tend to get up with the sun might find that the turbine coming on at 5 in the morning is a lot less objectionable than having to wait until it going off at 11 o'clock at night.
I would disagree with your motion, and I think the point would be that any of us could discuss when we sleep and when we wake up. And the other issue, I think that most of the time that we have been talking about how long the turbines will run and how long they will be off has never included children. We know that children have been in the equation, but it has never been the dominant conversation. It's kind of dominant this evening, but it hasn't been for a long period of time. So I think you could put several people in front of you, and you'd have a different view on who sleeps at 3 in the morning and who sleeps at 5 and who goes to bed at 9 and who goes to bed at midnight. So the point comes that there is going to be someone inconvenienced deciding which time you're going to choose. So I think if Sustainable Energy seems to think that the time that is best for curtailment is 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., it would be my decision to follow this, because everyone has a different viewpoint on what time they sleep and what time they wake up.
Okay. Any other comments? No, come on up.
Catherine Elder, Blacksmith Shop Road. I think I am the only neighbor that might have an actual comment about these hours tonight, so I will. As part of the WTOP committee, one of the questions that I asked of SEA was whether we could treat hours of operation in the daytime versus the nighttime equally in terms of projected income. And that answer very clearly was that we should treat them all with equal weight. It made no difference whether it was an hour during the day or an hour during the night, because even though wind may in general be somewhat more during the night, the rates that we get paid from NSTAR are less. So I think you should keep that in mind when considering which of these hours you're going to pick. That if they can in fact be treated equally, that the input here should be moderation for what the general window of sleep time is for people in that light. And you can check that with SEA, but that was made very clear to that committee that the hours should have equal weight in terms of their generation of income. So having said that, I would like to say that what I heard from Brent about the moderation of 2 hours on each end seemed very sensible to me. That it matched more the circadian type rhythms that children and adults tend to have. So I'm offering that as input.
Thank you.
It sounds like we're also having a debate without knowledge. And if SEA could come back and say 9 to 5 was almost the exact same output, would that change people's point of view? I think people are sticking with 11 to 7 because that's being said as a superior production of energy. If, as you noticed, before it was over an 8-year period, it was a difference of $3,000 net. We're not talking a lot of money to make it, we can actually base it on the hours of, what would serve people sleeping best.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second.
Well, there's only one other thing. If we shut them off at 9, we're going to lose an audience because everyone's going to rush to go to bed before our meetings are over.
The constant watchdog.
All right, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Sorry,
I said yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So the motion carries 3-2, with Mr. Murphy and Ms. Moffett voting against. All right. And thank you all. And that brings us to the Selectmen's reports. Does anyone have anything they'd wish to share at this time?
I do. And I won't speak too much about it because I think the county commissioners can present it in more detail. But one of the things that in the budgeting for the county, we used to provide a line item. The county did for the Cape Cod Commission of $100,000 every year. And then when Paul Niedzwiecki became the executive director, he stopped that, and the county no longer put money into it because Paul found that through a lot of grants that they were able to get, that they could manage their budget without direct funds from the county. But as our projects have moved forward, and we have many projects going, particularly the 208 project, the county felt that rather than just simply funding the commission in a line item, we would fund projects. And this year, we funded 2 projects. One is to help with the 208, which is the wastewater plant. And the other one was communication, because I think anybody in government knows that you never can communicate enough to the people about what's going on. And so we have put together, with the county and the commission working together, we're putting together a draft plan for communicating to all of the public on Cape Cod. And we helped, the county helped fund that. And some of the 208 funds that we had from the state helped fund it. And so we're going to be unveiling that around the end of October. And I think it will be very helpful, not only for all the citizens to know what services are provided through the county, to the towns, from the county, but also it might help the towns have a communication plan that might benefit them as well, to see whether or not this is really a good plan and how functional it is and how effective it is. So I just wanted to mention that because that's a big ticket item for us right now, is communication.
Anyone else?
I had an opportunity today to attend a meeting on the ESCO program, and it was very informative, and I'm sure that it could provide some opportunities for the town to be able to clear some things from our capital budget in another form of financing these programs moving forward. Specifically, some projects at the schools. The schools represent about 75% of the capital improvements. Of course, their infrastructure, their buildings are the largest buildings in town. And, of course, we have something before town meeting, but I've told the chairman, and Mr. Suso agrees, it would be beneficial to get the school committee and the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee together before town meeting, because there has to be some buy-in. Not only do you pay for this program by the cost savings, but you pay for it by the cost savings out of your budget. So it's important that the schools know that this isn't money that came out. We're going to have an opportunity to do some major capital improvements and be able to be more energy efficient, but it will come at some reduction in budget for both the town side and the school side. But these are things that they've wanted for a long time, things that would make us more sustainable as a community. So I look forward to an opportunity to be able to have a joint meeting with all three groups before town meeting, so we'll all be on the same page.
And with that in mind, depending on what we have.
Signatures.
Oh, that's right, I should pass these out. Thank you very much. We should give some consideration to the idea of perhaps a special meeting for that, because we have the meeting on the 7th and the 21st, and depending on the 7th, the agenda is pretty well packed now. So the 21st would be the other opportunity, that and the 4th, before town meeting. If those agendas prove to be rather busy, we may want to consider a special meeting for that. Just keep that in mind.
Can I make one suggestion? The Finance Committee was very loud and clear that they didn't want to get this the night before town meeting. So they wanted to be able to have a little time to be able to meet on this after we've all talked about it.
Okay.
So that when you're talking about the 21st, I think that would be advantageous.
Okay. So the
Does it
21st
have to
of
be
the
on a
week
Monday?
thereof.
Oh, excuse me.
No, I'm sorry.
Does it have to be on a Monday?
No, if we do a special meeting, especially where, the school committee meets Tuesdays, correct?
Yeah.
And the finance committee, I believe, meets Tuesdays or Wednesdays. So it may be something where, rather than, we've often talked about home and away games, so to speak, with the planning board. Sometimes we'll meet with them on a Tuesday, as opposed to them meeting with us on a Monday. So that's always a possibility that maybe we have two meetings in 1 week, and one of them would be dedicated solely to this discussion. So we'll reach out to the chairs of those committees and see what we can schedule.
Okay.
Anyone else?
On selectmen's reports, we're still,
Yes.
that there's, well, we talked about the meeting on the 5th of October in Franklin for selectmen. That's a meeting we plan to go to. And the climate change is another one that is on the 3rd of October, from 1 to 3 in the afternoon. I'm just seeing what else is there. He's peeking.
Use my pen.
Yeah, you're right, Saturday is the annual
Yes.
meeting of the Massachusetts
Right.
Selectmen.
Yes.
It's in Franklin, yeah.
Okay.
And
Is anybody going?
I have another commitment that weekend. I don't think I'll be able to attend, but it is recommended.
I'm going.
The whole board, was it 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Pat, with all 5 of us.
We all
went.
drove up in your Prius.
That's right, too.
This is about Taita.
No, it was you and Ahmed and me and
David?
David
there?
and
I think
and
Melissa went on her
She
own.
was in New York, and she was going to
She
meet
came
us
from the
there.
other direction,
That's right.
But it was the entire board, and
Yeah.
we
We
carpooled,
had a
and
great time.
it was a very good meeting, yeah. I learned a lot that day,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
Well, it's the 5th.
So as we get closer, if anyone else is interested, maybe we can talk about carpooling again. Although that time it was out in, what, Sturbridge, I think it was?
Yeah,
No,
that's
this is in
farther than
Franklin.
Franklin.
Yeah.
Franklin is Jeff Nunning's town, too.
We had discussed the draft that was presented, or the draft agenda for next week was presented to everyone. We'll probably be finalizing that tomorrow, so if anyone has any questions or comments about that, please let me know. And
Did you get, are there copies of that draft?
this is the only copy here.
Okay.
I believe it was emailed out to everyone. It certainly can take a look at that. If you have any questions, let me know. The other thing is, you'll probably have noticed that this evening we put the summary of actions in the minutes early in the agenda.
I like that.
Well, and that's the reason why I had some positive feedback from other members of the board about getting the minutia out of the way first. One of the other things, obviously, which was a bonus, was that if there were questions about some of those summary of action items, the individuals knew we're not sitting here for 2 or 3 hours waiting. So we were able to dispense with those rather quickly. So we'll continue to do that, and unless anyone has any objection to it.
Mr. Chairman, one other thing that I thought we might consider next week is the potential of expanding that Veterans Council from the
That's right, too. You
7
did ask me about
to the
that.
9, and because we have quite a few applications for the Veterans Council.
Just as a reminder, we did receive, after we had made the decision for 7, there was an email that we received from a number of veterans officers who had recommended 9 to this board. And so we'll put that on the agenda for consideration. Anyone else? Any updates? Any questions for the town manager, his report? Anything that you'd like to highlight, Mr. Suso?
Just a couple items, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Wanted to note to the board, it was my pleasure to attend the Little Pond Oyster Aquaculture Demonstration, which was held beginning at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, September 18th. The Water Quality Management Committee, of course, continues their excellent work in this area as well, and I provided the board a copy of the attachment which they made available. I want to thank all members of the board for the opportunity afforded to Heather and I to attend the just completed 2013 ICMA Professional Management Conference in Boston. It was my considerable honor to serve as one of the host committee managers for the conference, and the 5 years of planning and preparation for hosting this international conference ensured one of the most successful conferences in recent memory, with over 3,500 members in attendance from countries throughout the world. We are very gratified in being advised that this Boston conference had the second highest attendance in the history of the ICMA, so that was great news, and I think a tribute to excellent work by so many others as well. Under separate cover, the board's received a copy of the Department of Public Works Quarterly Report. This has been emailed to you by Diane Davidson in lieu of a formal presentation at a Board of Selectmen meeting, as requested in furtherance of respecting time sensitivity and meeting efficiency. If any member of the board has any questions regarding Ray Jack's report, please do not hesitate to contact me or Ray directly. We'd be happy to pursue those. And also, in anticipation of your upcoming meeting on October 7th, I had transmitted to the board a listing of the several November town meeting warrant articles on which the board will specifically be taking a formal position or recommendation, including various articles ranging from numbers 3 to number 45. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
And as a follow-up to those recommendations, if anyone has any feedback with respect to recommendations for those petitioners' articles and the water quality management articles, or any specific language, please do funnel them to the town manager's office so that they can formulate some drafts for next week. Anything else? Are we prepared to adjourn at this point?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any objections? We adjourn.
Cavosa Excavating is a family-owned and operated company specializing in the installation of Title V septic systems. Cavosa Excavating is one of the largest septic system installers on Cape Cod. Whether it's upgrading your current system or installing a whole new system, Cavosa Excavating can do the job. Cavosa Excavating, 508-563-5530.